Chapter 8:18. Rights of Choice. Zhao Xian smiled and replied, "Let them take their time to think it over. It's only a couple of days. And not one to wait around either. Besides, they wouldn't figure out a better means of making a living anyway." Fang chuckled and agreed, saying, "That's very true." Deep down, she knew that her daughter-in-law had bought the land to cultivate flowers and trees, keep bees, and continue producing lipsticks. She had no intention of letting others in on her secret. They couldn't possibly replicate the lipstick-making process. It was time for them to stop dreaming. With the earnings from the land sales, they could build a new house and acquire additional fields for storage purposes. Everything would turn out well. What was the use of prying into Qiao Shen's plans for the money? Update on Omicron X0VL. Omicron. Everyone agreed that nothing in the world came for free. Qiao Shen was offering such a high price not because the buyers were fellow villagers, but because there must be a more significant fortune behind her actions. They couldn't afford to miss out on such an opportunity. And they were right. Qiao Shen wasn't simply giving away money. She was genuinely trying to help the villagers, and her flower and lipstick business would easily recoup the investment. She didn't mind spending that much for their benefit. The choice was simple and clear-cut. It was up to each individual to determine whether they found it worthwhile. If they believed they had the means to sell the land at a higher price on their own and felt confident about their fortune, they were free to do so. They didn't need to concern themselves with what others were doing. Their main objective was to earn money, wasn't it? On the other hand, if they didn't think selling the land would fetch them a substantial sum, they could choose to forego the opportunity. Ultimately, the decision was theirs to make. Those who had their own ideas refrained from prying into the matter with the first group of families. They understood that they wouldn't gain any information from them, so they approached other families instead. They believed that those families might have some knowledge about the situation. However, to their surprise, neither of the other families knew anything about the first group of families purchasing land. They were equally perplexed as to why the land was bought from outsiders rather than within their own families. "No, I must speak with them." Ms.Mi was unable to tolerate the situation and was ready to confront the first group of families instead of entertaining questions from outsiders. However, Ms. Yan immediately intervened and stopped her. With a smile, she dismissed those who were prying, saying, "Mom, one don't think we need to delve into this matter. They purchased fields that are adjacent to their own. Since our fields are not available, they didn't approach us. That must be the reason why they excluded us." But Ms.Mi was not convinced by this explanation. She added, "I don't care. They bought fields and that's all there is to it. I'm starting to believe that they deliberately avoided buying our fields." Confused by her mother-in-law's widened eyes, Ms. Yan let out a perplexed sound. "What?" Ms.Mi continued, "Do you think they refused to buy our fields so that they could acquire the ones that are interconnected?" Chapter 8:19. Reasoning. Ms. Yan. "Honestly," Ms.Mi exclaimed, "why do they have to buy connected fields? Can't they just buy separate ones? I must reason with them." Seeing that some families earned hundreds of liang by selling their fields, with some even earning 200 liang, Ms.Mi couldn't help but feel jealous and bitter. "Mom?" Ms. Yan inwardly complained and intervened, stopping her. "Mom, the first group of families has their own reasons for buying connected fields, and that's their business. Even if you try to talk to them, they won't change their minds, right? Elder aunt and fifth sister-in-law are both independent-minded individuals. They don't easily alter their decisions. Don't ruin the improved relationship between us." Update on Omicron X0VL. Omicron. "It's simply not worth it, is it?" Ms.Mi stiffened, contemplating her daughter-in-law's words. She didn't care much about the improved relationship, which didn't concern her as much. However, one thing Ms. Yan said struck a chord in her mind. Ms. Fang and Qiao Shen were both strong-willed individuals who never swayed in their beliefs. Ms.Mi couldn't convince Ms. Fang or out-argue her. It would only lead to her own frustration. Never mind. Ms.Mi suddenly felt annoyed. They'll let it go. They should be grateful that I'm not causing them any trouble. Ms.Mi still felt a lingering irritation as if she had lost something significant. Ms. Yan's lips twitched, silently relieved that she had managed to stop her. That was a close call. To appease Ms.Mi, Ms. Yan expressed her respect and admiration, even offering her some of her own savings. This gesture made Ms.Mi beam with delight, thanking Ms. Yan for her profound respect. Ms. Yan couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction upon hearing those words. She had accumulated a substantial amount of private savings, earning dozens of liang each month. Giving a portion of it to her mother-in-law was well within her means. Just as Ms.Mi was being pampered, Ms.Ma arrived. Ms.Mi shared the same idea as Ms. Niu, intending to rally her support and confront the first group of families together. Ms. Yan inwardly cursed. Her third aunt-in-law was truly wicked. She could create a commotion all by herself and then drag her mother-in-law into it. She never did anything beneficial for Ms. Niu either. However, before Ms. Yan could say anything, Ms. Niu declined the offer, refusing to participate. Ms. Niu had just received money from Ms. Yan, and she couldn't directly humiliate her daughter-in-law. Instead, she informed Ms.Mi that she would pass on the opportunity. Ms.Mi was utterly surprised. This amounted to hundreds of liang. She was about to persist in her persuasion when Ms. Yan deflected the conversation, diverting Ms.Mi's attention elsewhere. Annoyed, Ms.Mi cursed at Ms. Yan and branded Ms. Niu as a coward. Fine, she would go and reason with them herself. The outcome was entirely predictable. Returning home, Ms.Mi felt even more irritated. She firmly believed that the first group of families was buying others' fields to avoid sharing profits with them. Shao Lulang furrowed his brow, expressing disdain. Mom, stop engaging with them. Why bother getting close to the first group of families? Don't worry, Mom, it'll surpass Shao Yunduan, I guarantee it. Remember, never approach the first group of families again. What? Ms.Mi was about to defend herself, but Shao Lulang's cold and impatient expression startled her. Okay, Lulang, whatever you say. Chapter 820. Money-making. Shao Lulang retreated to his room, his impatience dissipating. Ms.Mi let out a sigh of relief. She noticed that her son had become increasingly irritable lately, always wearing a cold expression. She dared not provoke him or defy his words. But she also observed that he seemed more motivated and dedicated than before. Perhaps it was because he had been working so hard that he was too exhausted to maintain a cheerful demeanor. Update on Biomicron X0VL. Xiomicron M. She had advised him not to overwork himself and to take some time to relax. However, he ignored her and told her to stop nagging. So she refrained from saying anything further. Her only wish was for him to achieve success as a cultivated talent in the future. Visitors frequently approached the first group of families in the Shao family, offering to sell their fields. Only foolish individuals would reject such a lucrative deal or hesitate to sell their fields. It was an expedient way to earn money. Who would refuse such an opportunity? Even the neighboring villagers grew curious. Some couldn't help but feel envious that they were unable to sell their own fields. Of course, there were exceptions. 2 families, owning a total of 30 mu, deliberated and ultimately declined to sell their fields. They were convinced that the first group of families in the Shao family possessed inside information that allowed them to purchase seemingly worthless fields at such a high price. But they viewed the first group as deceitful and self-centered, unwilling to share their knowledge with others. Determined to take a risk, they chose to retain their fields. They believed that they might soon sell them for thousands of liang, earning many times more than they could currently. Not only did they decide not to sell their fields, but they also attempted to convince others to follow suit. They sought to form a united front and pressure the Shao family into revealing the true value of the fields. However, all the other families unequivocally rejected their proposition. They had no hesitation in doing so. Those families were not in dire need of such a large sum of money, unlike the less fortunate families. To them, earning 100 or 200 liang was already a substantial amount. As for any peculiar or supernatural aspects related to the fields, well, if they could make money from it, it would be attributed to the good fortune and talent of Shao Yunduan, the provincial champion. If they were able to generate wealth from these circumstances, it would be considered their good luck and they would deserve it. By selling their fields, they aimed to avoid succumbing to greed. 100 or 200 liang would already bring significant improvements to their families' lives. The villagers who couldn't sell their fields couldn't help but feel envious of those who did. Why sell the fields? Only foolish people would sell. The 2 foolish families felt irritated upon hearing those remarks. They whispered among themselves, let them make their profits. But they will surely regret it. Yes, something must be amiss. Let's hold on to the fields and make our own fortune. The 2 families made up their minds to retain their fields and follow the Shao family's example by pursuing the same business venture. Qiao Xian did not pressure them to sell if they didn't want to. After 2 days, even if they changed their minds and wished to sell, she wouldn't purchase their fields. She wasn't desperate for more fields, but she couldn't go back on her word. Qiao Xian made the decision to acquire an additional 520 mu of land to connect with the existing ones, bringing the total to 600 mu. Chapter 821. Feeling of disappointment. They could easily bypass the 30 mu of land. Without it, they could purchase several dozen more mu to open up new fields. The land agents swiftly arrived and handled all the necessary arrangements. Qiao Xian wasted no time in hiring 40 workers, and the project commenced promptly. The vast expanse of over 300 mu was a neglected wasteland, overrun with weeds, shrubs, and various trees. The first task at hand was to clear the ground. However, Qiao Xian specifically instructed the workers not to remove the well-preserved large trees scattered throughout the area. These trees added a unique and picturesque touch to the landscape and provided much-needed shade for rest breaks when the workers grew tired. All the land was now connected into a single plot, requiring resegmentation. Some areas needed filling, while others needed excavation and leveling. A network of small roads needed to be crisscrossed, with accompanying ditches along the way. Update on Biomicron X0VL. Xiomicron M. It was indeed a monumental undertaking. Fortunately, it was late autumn and early winter, and the crops from the surrounding fields had already been harvested. This spared them the task of clearing away any vegetation, allowing them to focus on working with the natural terrain. Those who had sold their land wasted no time in using their earnings to purchase new plots of land. The newly acquired land was situated a bit farther from the home village, but the satisfaction of having money in their pockets and new land outweighed any inconvenience. The entire family eagerly ventured out to open up the fields, excited about the prospects it held for the coming spring. No one felt left out, as they all had a role to play in this busy endeavor. The two families who had chosen not to sell their fields couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness in their hearts as they observed the Shao family and other families enthusiastically exploring new lands. Subconsciously, they began to harbor suspicions that the first section of the Shao family had some ulterior motive for their fields, perhaps hoping they would come begging to sell. Yet, Qiao Xian remained true to her word and did not approach them with any offers or inquiries. This surprised and somewhat irritated them. They resorted to spreading rumors, suggesting that the Shao family intended to make a fortune from the fields they had purchased, causing those who had bought the land to regret their decision deeply. Whispered conversations and gossip circulated, casting negative shadows on the Shao family's intentions. Some even shared these tales with Ms. Fang and Qiao Xian. Ms. Fang responded with a scornful sneer, paying no mind to the rumors. Qiao Xian, on the other hand, simply smiled. Those people truly failed to grasp her genuine concern for the well-being of the villagers. It seemed they were adept at creating false narratives and misunderstandings. The majority of the villagers had a clear understanding of the situation. They had received their money by selling their fields to the Shao family. Meanwhile, the two families who had attempted to imitate the Shao family's business model were taken aback when they witnessed Qiao Xian cultivating roses, Chinese roses, pomegranates, osmanthus, lemons and other flowers, along with a small portion dedicated to cassavas. It dawned on them that Qiao Xian was producing ingredients for making lipsticks. This revelation left them in a state of shock because, despite their efforts, they couldn't manage to produce lipsticks themselves. Filled with deep regret, they implored the elderly members of their families to plead with the Shao family to sell the fields back to them. However, Qiao Xian politely declined their request. She no longer required such a large amount of land for her endeavors. Chapter 822. Popular Qi. Since Qiao Xian no longer needed the fields, it would be unfair to force the buyers to sell them back. This realization left the two families seething with anger, and the two arrogant men in charge became the subject of ridicule and jokes in the village. As the fields underwent development, Shao Dalong and Ms. Fang would frequently visit and inspect them. Meanwhile, Qiao Xian, Qi and Taotao ventured back into the mountains. Qiao Xian still had plans for the valuable tea seeds that were needed to fill the vacant area in Jianghu village. She intended to start cultivating the seeds after the new year, allowing them to be transplanted around March. Recalling the abundance of wild lemons in the mountains, Qiao Xian decided to dig them up, stimulate the roots by breaking the branches, and temporarily cultivate them in the garden. In early spring they could be transplanted to orchards on the outskirts of the province. The lemons and their juice were essential for enhancing the flavors of the drinks served at the dessert stores. Qiao Xian aimed to have at least 30 or 40 mu of lemon orchards. Update on Biomicron X0VL. Xiomicron M. Furthermore, this season marked the return of plump wild animals in the mountains, accompanied by a variety of wild fruits. It was the perfect time to venture into the mountains and gather resources. Qi's hunting skills had improved, and he had grown stronger with a sharper sense, leading to a bountiful harvest for their family. Pheasants, hares, deer, muntjac, grouse and wild pigeons which Qiao Xian enjoyed, were harvested almost daily. Although it was more convenient to store the meat during this season, There was still an excess that needed to be addressed, prompting the family to resume making smoked meat. During their hunts, they even encountered wild deer, and Qi managed to bring back 3 fully grown deer to the village, causing jealousy among the villagers. Wild boars were also hunted, as their meat was perfect for smoking. In addition to the game from the mountains, Xiao Xian and her family also acquired many large smoked fish. Their stockpile of smoked meat from the previous year had lasted for almost half a year, attesting to its delicious taste. Whether it was steamed, fried, stewed, made into claypot rice, or used as fillings for other dishes, the flavors were exceptional. The anticipation for the next hunting season grew within the family, keeping them busy with preparations. Meanwhile, the villagers couldn't help but feel envious of Qi's hunting abilities, making him quite popular among them. People from their own village, neighboring villages, and even distant areas approached Ms. Fang and eldest uncle, expressing their interest in arranging marriages for Qi. Some individuals were also interested in Taotao. Ms. Fang felt a mix of pride and helplessness in response to the attention Qi and Taotao received. She cautioned eldest uncle not to make any promises regarding their marriages at this time. Eldest uncle's expression turned serious as he responded, "It's a matter of great importance and I don't take such promises lightly. We must approach it with caution and thoroughness." Ms. Fang rolled her eyes and scoffed, "I have my doubts. You tend to change your mind too easily, and I wouldn't put it past you to make promises just to save face." Eldest uncle was displeased by her remark. "That's not true. I'm not that foolish." However, he nearly made a mistake soon after. Ms. Fang approached Xiao Yunduan and Xiao Xian, seeking their assistance in arranging marriages for Qi and Taotao. The dynamics had shifted. Xiao Yunduan's success and Xiao Xian being County Magistrate Qiao's daughter, along with their profitable land purchases, had attracted the attention of many villagers. Chapter 823, Dragon Fruits and Papaya Seeds. So, those who sought to form a martial alliance might have ulterior motives. What if they targeted the wrong individuals and deceived them into making promises? This could potentially bring trouble to Qi and Taotao in the future, putting the entire family at risk. Ms. Fang was determined not to let this happen. The family was thriving and her sons and daughters-in-law were all doing well. The peace and harmony within the family were invaluable. Xiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan wholeheartedly agreed to assist in the matter. "Mom, don't worry. My wife and one will ensure that everything goes smoothly. When it comes to Qi and Taotao's marriages, we want focus solely on family background. What truly matters is the character of the individuals," Xiao Yunduan reassured. Ms. Fang smiled and sighed with relief. "You're absolutely right. Just look at your third sister-in-law. Her family may not have been well off, but she has thrived after marrying into our family. That's what truly counts. Qi and Taotao don't need partners who are highly successful, but they must be reliable and not cause any trouble." Xiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan felt a hint of embarrassment. Xiao Xian chuckled. "Niam, it's not that simple. We can't just settle for anyone for Qi and Taotao. We will handle this matter carefully and make sure to find the best matches for them. If someone proposes a marriage now, we will decline. What do you think about waiting until after my husband's spring examination? That way, we'll have enough time to thoroughly evaluate and gather information," suggested Xiao Xian. Ms. Fang was pleased to hear this proposal and nodded in agreement. They shouldn't rush to find suitors now. What if Xiao Yunduan becomes the advanced scholar and starts working in the governmental office? Qi and Taotao would have a much broader selection of potential partners then. Xuan arrived with a group of people from the province. Yuezheng Shao's letter informed them that they had obtained many dragon fruits and papaya seeds. Xiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan were invited to visit them and collaborate on this project. Xiao Xian was delighted by the news and made up her mind to visit them. She intended to use her superpower to ensure the safekeeping of the seeds throughout the winter. Concerned for her safety, Xiao Yunduan decided to accompany her on the journey. Xiao Xian carefully selected some distinctive fruits from the garden. Although they no longer had pineapples or sugar canes, she gathered a few bananas, dragon fruits, and papayas. The bergamot trees were thriving, producing large and fragrant fruits. They collected a total of 12 bergamots. 6 of them would go to the Xia family, and the remaining 6 to the Yuezheng family. They also obtained fresh ginseng. Coincidentally, Qi had returned from hunting with 2 roe deer and several pheasants. They decided to bring both roe deer and selected 8 pheasants and 8 hares each. They also packed 4 bottles of homemade mushroom sauce, tomato sauce, sesame oil, red oil pickles, and chili sauce. However, they decided to leave behind the unfinished smoked meat. The wagons were now filled with these provisions. Qiao Xian also successfully saved the silver ink orchids from the Yuezheng family. She placed 2 seeds in her special space and planned to bring the original one to the Xie family. Once everything was arranged, they set off with Chu Shan. As good friends, Qiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan didn't hide anything from Chu Shan. They openly discussed their concerns. Qiao Xian inquired about the situation with Yuezheng Ting. It was an event that couldn't be concealed. Numerous people had witnessed or heard about it, and no one could erase that memory. Chapter 824. Future Chu Shan was filled with excitement when he was asked about the situation. Instead of merely expressing his excitement, he began to mock and ridicule the second section of the family. The strained relationship between the 2 sections had always been evident, with Ms.Mi Jr. frequently bullying Chu Shan and the servants. Therefore, when the second section of the family encountered trouble, Chu Shan eagerly seized the opportunity to mock them. In light of these circumstances, Chu Shan and the others became more inclined to align themselves with Qiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan. After Qiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan left the province, Madame Qiao, her daughter, and concubine Du also departed soon after. Subsequently, rumors about what had transpired involving Yuezheng Ting began to circulate. Although Qiao Wei was involved, very few people discussed it, and numerous versions of the rumors regarding Yuezheng Ting's situation emerged. Soon enough, her reputation plummeted to the lowest point, subjecting her to constant ridicule. Even some troublemakers resorted to creating vulgar jokes at her expense. Yuezheng Ting and Ms.Mi Jr. withdrew from public life for several days, and the servants were well aware of the situation but dared not speak of it to them. The second old master, who had been out, returned home in a fit of anger and confronted Ms.Mi Jr. He lashed out at Yuezheng Ting, blaming Ms.Mi Jr. for her inability to raise their daughter properly. In his rage, he even slapped Yuezheng Ting across the face. The mother and daughter were taken aback and overwhelmed with distress upon learning about the situation. They couldn't comprehend what had transpired and demanded an explanation. The recent events had left a deep scar in Yuezheng Ting's life, resembling a haunting nightmare. The news she heard from her father only intensified her anguish. Overwhelmed by shame, she instantly blushed and sought solace in Ms.Mi Jr.'s comforting embrace, avoiding any contact with others. She couldn't fathom her future anymore. She knew she would never be able to join her friends at their homes or on trips. Those who held grudges against her would surely revel in her misfortune and mock her mercilessly. The weight of her disgrace left her unable to face anyone ever again. Thoughts raced through her mind. What would Brother Xie think of her? Would he believe she was an utterly frivolous girl? No, that couldn't be true. The idea of marrying Xie Jingrong seemed unbearable as the thought of being looked down upon by him filled her with misery. Ms.Mi Jr. experienced a mix of embarrassment, surprise and fury, overwhelmed by the situation and its implications. Ms.Mi Jr. reached her breaking point, unable to tolerate the humiliation inflicted upon her by her own husband. Old Master, it must be the elder sister-in-law who orchestrated this scheme. The people from Lingyuan Temple vowed to keep the secret, and our servants are too afraid to speak up. It must be the elder sister-in-law's doing. She wants to humiliate us, to tarnish Ting's reputation. She must have paid people to spread the rumors. Old Master, we implore you to help us. Ting is being bullied and her prospects for marriage are now ruined. Marrying someone? The second Old Master scoffed. I'll consider us lucky that she isn't engaged. Otherwise, we would have faced even more embarrassment when the engagement fell apart. Ms.Mi Jr. sobbed even harder, expressing her grievances. It has to be the elder sister-in-law's doing. Otherwise, why would the rumor single out Ting and not mention elder Miss Qiao, even though both are involved? It's clear as day. The elder sister-in-law has a close relationship with Qiao Xian, so they shield elder Miss Qiao from scrutiny. Infuriated, the second Old Master found himself believing Ms.Mi Jr.'s reasoning. It seemed logical to him given the circumstances. Chapter 825. Revenge. The couple approached Madame Yuezheng, seeking a fair resolution to their predicament. Upon hearing their plea, Madame Yuezheng was taken aback and nearly fainted. She couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. Overwhelmed with disappointment, she directed her anger towards Ms.Mi, questioning her abilities as a mother. She expressed concerns about Yuezheng Ting's future and expressed her disappointment in their actions. Ms.Mi Jr., feeling deeply wounded, covered her face and wept. Madame Yuezheng, I am to blame. But please, I beg you to take care of Ting and ensure justice for her. Madame Yuezheng's expression grew stern. She ordered, bring first Madame here. While Ms.Mi Jr. and her daughter might have been mistaken in their accusations, First Madam should not have taken actions to harm them. She was determined not to let that slide. As Madame Yuezheng spoke, she started to grasp the situation unfolding before her. She remained calm even as Ms.Mi Jr. glared at her and continued to accuse her. With a dark tone, Madame Yuezheng replied, "Elder son's wife, your accusations have gone too far. We are all part of the same family. By attempting to set me up, you tarnish our family's reputation. You are mistaken." First Madam responded quietly, "Madame Yuezheng, do you have any evidence to support your claim? Accusing me without any grounds is highly improper, isn't it?" Ms.Mi Jr. snapped, "It's evident. You're seeking revenge on me. If you have a problem with me, come directly to me. Why involve Ting in your schemes? You certainly have a high opinion of yourself." First Madam sneered. She had always been irritated by Ms.Mi Jr.'s habit of complaining about her in front of Madame Yuezheng. With a hushed tone, she continued, "If I ever wish to take revenge on you, I have countless methods at my disposal. And rest assured, one would ensure that you never discover it was me." As far as First Madam was concerned, her granddaughter was still too young to be concerned about her reputation. Moreover, the first and second sections of the family were distinct entities. "Madame Yuezheng, as you have stated, we are all part of the Yuezheng family. While I may not have a daughter, my sons may have daughters in the future. There is no benefit for me in engaging in such actions. Second sister-in-law, you assume I am responsible for all this, but do not make baseless assumptions. Show me the evidence. Otherwise, if you dare accuse me of something I have not done, I will slap you in the face." You dare speak so boldly because you know I have no evidence." Ms.Mi Jr. trembled with anger. First Madam regarded her as if she were staring at a fool. "So, in the end you have no evidence, yet you dare spout nonsense and accuse me in front of Madame Yuezheng so audaciously?" Ms.Mi Jr. Madame Yuezheng felt a deep annoyance, secretly calling Ms.Mi Jr. a foolish woman. It seemed that Ms.Mi Jr. had easily managed to irritate her, and she imagined that her elder son's wife was likely mocking her inwardly. Feeling embarrassed, Madame Yuezheng furrowed her brow in anger. This was precisely why she had never held a fondness for First Madam. Her daughter-in-law was excessively intimidating and imposing, showing no regard for the feelings of the elders or attempting to ingratiate herself with them. She could never warm up to a person like that. Before they could inquire further, First Madam calmly began to explain. Many people had witnessed the incident, and Yuezheng Ting had openly revealed everything. Therefore, concealing the incident was impossible. The fact that the news did not spread until several days later was already a stroke of luck. The Yuezheng family was renowned in the province, and any scandal involving a member of the family naturally attracted significant attention. Hence, people reveled in discussing the matter. As for elder Miss Qiao, no one even knew who she was, so there was barely any gossip surrounding her. Chapter 826. Reasonable. The increasing wealth of the Yuezheng family attracted both allies and rivals, creating opportunities for their competitors to ruin their reputation and spread vile jokes about the family. When such gossip was spread, it was clear that there was someone behind it. But what could they do? Rumors were always intangible and omnipresent. Even the immense wealth of the Yuezheng family couldn't suppress them completely. Furthermore, the more explanations were offered, the more amusing it became for outsiders. They would seize upon any opportunity to create even more absurd tales that portrayed the family in a negative light. If they didn't trust Madame Yuezheng's judgment, they could provide explanations, but it wouldn't change the situation. Madame Yuezheng and the others felt a sense of numbness upon hearing these words. It was painfully true. The second old master felt immense shame and shot a resentful glare at his wife. If it weren't for this woman, he wouldn't find himself in this situation. She had proven herself to be incompetent, limited to playing petty tricks at home. She couldn't even properly educate her own daughter. Ms.Mi Jr. remained infuriated and had no trust in a single word uttered by First Madam. She firmly believed that First Madam was merely attempting to argue and defend herself. Even if competitors were involved in orchestrating the situation, First Madam had to be implicated as well. First Madam added, "Suggest you publicly portray it as an accident." By labeling it as an accident, they would acknowledge the incident while redirecting the public's focus away from other possibilities. Indeed, most people would believe it was an accident. After all, a woman from the prestigious Yuezheng family could never be involved with unemployed individuals. It must have been Lady Yuezheng who had the misfortune. Nevertheless, her marriage prospects would undoubtedly be affected. True to form, Ms. Mi Jr. hastened to arrange potential marriage alliances for her daughter, hoping to prove that Yuezheng Ting still had promising suitors. However, those whom she had previously favored or disliked turned her down. Ms.Mi Jr. seethed with anger, cursing those individuals as simple-minded fools. First Madam was left speechless upon hearing this from Auntie Hua. The rumor continued to circulate, and Ms.Mi Jr.'s attempts to find a suitor seemed futile. No one would agree to it. She should have waited at least a couple of years before making such efforts. Perhaps, at least half a year later, right? Ms.Mi Jr. was completely oblivious to the concept of haste makes waste. She remained increasingly driven and motivated to push further. This infuriated and worried Madame Yuezheng. She sternly warned Ms.Mi Jr. not to subject herself to further humiliation. Feeling miserable, Ms.Mi Jr. cried. Her daughter was already 18 years old, and if they waited for a few more years she would have no suitable suitors left. Time was of the essence and her daughter couldn't afford to wait any longer. Madame Yuezheng's anger intensified. She criticized Ms.Mi Jr. for being irritating and for her failure to plan ahead. As the tearful Ms.Mi Jr. was dismissed, Madame Yuezheng massaged her temples and called for First Madam to discuss a plan. Reluctantly, Madame Yuezheng had to admit that her elder son's wife was more dependable, despite her personal dislike for her. First Madam swiftly offered her suggestion. The best solution would be to bring Yuezheng Ting back to their hometown to find a suitable suitor. Ms.Mi Jr. should not focus on the suitor's family background. Rather, integrity should be the most important factor to consider. Madame Yuezheng was taken aback by the suggestion. After a prolonged silence, she responded tersely, acknowledging that she understood, and then asked First Madam to leave. First Madam showed no objection and left without hesitation. However, Madame Yuezheng soon came to the realization that it was indeed the only way forward. Chapter 827. Back to Hometown U. TED by BX in Zeroville. Xiaomicronem Yuezheng Ting was reaching an age where waiting for a suitable suitor was becoming increasingly difficult. The longer they waited, the fewer good prospects there would be available. However, given the scandal that had tarnished Yuezheng Ting's reputation in the province, it seemed impossible to find a suitable suitor for her there. Madame Yuezheng considered the option of looking for a suitor in their hometown, which was located at a considerable distance from the province. The Yuezheng family held a strong position in their hometown, and they could protect Yuezheng Ting when needed. Furthermore, the rumors would not reach that far. While the suitors from their hometown might not have as privileged backgrounds, there was still a chance for Yuezheng Ting to find a suitable partner there. Madame Yuezheng finally made the decision to pursue this path. However, Ms.Mi Jr. fiercely opposed this suggestion when she heard it. No, absolutely not. She refused to let her daughter return to the humble surroundings of their hometown to marry someone there. She believed it would ruin her daughter's life. Madame Yuezheng was furious. She cared for her granddaughter just as much and was not out to ruin her life. She was not an evil grandmother. Furthermore, Madame Yuezheng blamed Ms.Mi Jr. for failing to properly teach and guide her daughter, leading to the situation they were facing now. Ms.Mi Jr. remained determined and steadfast in her stance, adamantly refusing Madame Yuezheng's suggestion. She had changed, no longer displaying her previous sweetness and pretentiousness. She had a singular focus now: her daughters must marry someone in the province or even in more affluent regions. They were destined for a prosperous life, not to return to the countryside like their hometown. Their wealth was too great to be given to someone poor. Ms.Mi Jr. disregarded her previous behavior in front of her mother-in-law. The only thing she cared about now was ensuring her daughter would not marry someone beneath her, who would take advantage of her and her wealth. Madame Yuezheng was taken aback by Ms.Mi Jr.'s resolute rejection. She had never expected her beloved daughter-in-law, whom she had adored for so long, to be like this. It was a great shock to her and she began to feel deeply disappointed. Furious at Ms.Mi Jr.'s refusal and her accusations of favoritism, Madame Yuezheng decided to drop the matter altogether. She was thoroughly disappointed in Ms.Mi Jr. She resolved not to impose any further requests on Yuezheng Ting or her. After all, Yuezheng Ting was not her own daughter but merely a granddaughter. It seemed that Yuezheng Ting had no interest in returning to their hometown either. From that moment on, Madame Yuezheng decided to change her treatment of Ms.Mi Jr. She no longer treated her with the same kindness and favor as before. Ms.Mi Jr. breathed a sigh of relief and began seeking potential suitors, even considering those from neighboring towns. However, her efforts yielded no positive results. The families interested in marrying Yuezheng Ting did not meet Ms.Mi Jr.'s standards. Just when they believed the situation would continue dragging on for an extended period, an unexpected event occurred, bringing about a turning point. Unfortunately, it was not a favorable turn of events. Yuezheng Ting's sister Yuezheng Yan, who had been married for a while, caused trouble once again. Yuezheng Yan's husband relied heavily on the Yuezheng family for his business, and their family enjoyed wealth and numerous properties. However, this dependence and Yuezheng Yan's growing arrogance created a rift between her and her husband, driving them further apart. Yuezheng Yan strongly opposed her husband, Qiyun, having a concubine. Just 2 months into their marriage, she forcefully dismissed the maid who had slept with her husband. Not stopping there, Yuezheng Yan replaced the other attractive maids with plain-looking and clumsy ones. She was not concerned about mistreating the maids she had purchased, and she would punish them severely if they dared to cross any boundaries. Qiyun, Yuezheng Yan's husband, struggled with her controlling behavior. Initially, his mother explained that Yuezheng Yan's actions stemmed from her care and desire to keep him close. Although Qiyun did not appreciate it, he reluctantly accepted this explanation. Chapter 828, Yuezheng Ting's Sister Yu. Ted by BXN Zeroville. Xiaomicronem Yuezheng Yan had become increasingly tyrannical, believing that her husband's family should conform to her every whim and mood. Within just 6 months, she had managed to offend not only her husband's entire family but also their relatives. Despite their resentment, they dared not confront her due to her status as a member of the influential Yuezheng family. Although Yuezheng Yan was arrogant and overbearing, she had not engaged in any cruel or lethal acts, leading her husband's family to tolerate her behavior. However, Qiyun soon discovered something shocking. Yuezheng Yan had arranged marriages for his 2 serving maids with elderly, unattractive widowers from rural areas. She had gone to great lengths to find such matches. As a result, the 2 serving maids were subjected to a wretched existence. When Qiyun learned of their plight, one of the maids had already succumbed to the relentless torment, while the other had aged prematurely, bearing scars on her forehead and losing all her former beauty. Filled with horror and anguish, Qiyun immediately brought the surviving maid back home and placed her in a convent for her safety. Determined to uncover the truth, he confronted Yuezheng Yan about her actions. Yuezheng Yan insisted that she had found 2 excellent suitors for the serving maids and had generously provided them with a substantial sum of money to live a comfortable life. Qiyun, trusting his legal wife, believed that she had acted in their best interest. Unbeknownst to Qiyun, Yuezheng Yan's intentions were far from noble. She was leading the maids down a path of despair and destruction. However, Yuezheng Yan showed no remorse. Instead, she began to create a tumultuous scene, accusing Qiyun of rekindling his relationship with the maids and questioning his love for her as his legal wife. She cried, shouted, and hurled vulgar insults at Qiyun, even seeking support from her parents and Madame Yuezheng. Ms.Mi Jr. and Madame Yuezheng, being fond of Yuezheng Yan, became incensed upon hearing her side of the story. In the end, Qiyun was compelled to apologize, bowing down to Yuezheng Yan's demands. Yuezheng Yan may have obtained her perceived justice, but she had lost the support and respect she once had from Qiyun's family. Qiyun eventually made the difficult decision to distance himself from Yuezheng Yan. Although she appeared to hold a position of authority within Qiyun's family, the truth was that no one genuinely liked her or regarded her as a true family member. It was during this time that Yuezheng Yan discovered Qiyun had a mistress who had even given birth to a son and a daughter. Overwhelmed by jealousy and rage, Yuezheng Yan assembled a group of her own men and stormed the mistress' residence with the intention of harming her and selling her children. Upon learning of the situation, Qiyun rushed to the scene to intervene. Unfortunately, the children had already been sold to intermediaries, and his mistress had been subjected to a brutal beating, losing consciousness multiple times. Qiyun's anger surged within him. He rescued his mistress and instructed his men to protect her while he set off to find and secure the safety of the children. Meanwhile, Yuezheng Yan's mental state deteriorated further. She wept uncontrollably and retreated to the solace of her own home. News of the shocking incident spread throughout the province, leaving no doubt that few would tolerate their husbands having mistresses. However, there was no support or sympathy to be found for Yuezheng Yan in the aftermath. The mistress' actions were undoubtedly immoral, but taking her life was not the solution. Teaching her a lesson and holding her accountable for her deeds would have been more appropriate. Yuezheng Yan's decision to sell her husband's children to an agent instead of bringing them home was truly horrifying and inhumane. Yuezheng Yan had never enjoyed a favorable reputation, and her behavior within her husband's family only added fuel to the rumors that circulated about her. She consistently disregarded the authority of the elder family members and imposed her will upon others. Additionally, her failure to bear any children and her blatant disregard for virtuous conduct only furthered her negative image. It was not surprising that her husband might consider leaving her, given the circumstances. Many sighed in resignation, accepting the situation as a natural consequence. When Ms.Mi Jr. heard about the rumors surrounding her daughter, she refused to believe them. Instead, she attributed the spread of such stories to jealousy from individuals who were envious of her daughter's prosperity and well-being. Chapter 829. Ms.Mi Jr. Getting Mental U. TED by BX Zeroville. Siamacronem. Prior to Yuezheng Ting's accident, the process of arranging her marriage was already facing obstacles, primarily due to her sister's behavior. Families who valued propriety and adherence to rules were hesitant to accept a daughter-in-law with such flaws. Only those who prioritized their own material gains were willing to overlook these concerns. The return of Yuezheng Yan to the family further enraged Ms.Mi Jr., leading her to curse at the Qi family. She felt that everything was going wrong and blamed the heavens for subjecting her daughters to such hardships. As First Madam and the Old Master held the authority, Ms.Mi Jr. was not allowed to execute her own plans based on personal interests. Therefore they took charge and addressed the matter. After years of enduring the situation, Qiyun's parents and Qiyun himself came to the Yuezheng family to expose Yuezheng Yan's actions in front of Madame Yuezheng, First Madam, Ms.Mi Jr. and her husband. Ultimately, they declared that Qiyun intended to marry his mistress and insisted on bringing the children back home. They also prohibited Yuezheng Yan from interfering in the matter. If Yuezheng Yan objected to these terms, they were willing to grant a divorce. The Qi family would return the dowry and provide an additional 10,000 liang as compensation. Ms.Mi Jr. was pushed to the brink of a mental breakdown by these developments. Ms.Mi Jr. was furious at the audacity of the Qi family. She believed that the fault lay with her elder brother and elder sister-in-law, as they should have exerted pressure on the Qi family to prevent such behavior. While acknowledging that the Qi family did consider this aspect, the primary decision-makers within the family were known for their fairness in handling family matters. Despite the questionable actions of the Qi family, Yuezheng Yan found herself in an even worse predicament. Both Madame Yuezheng and the influential members of the family suggested pursuing a divorce. However, both Ms.Mi Jr. and Yuezheng Yan vehemently rejected this proposition. They refused to entertain the idea. Divorce was out of the question for them. Their underlying intention was to withhold any benefits from outsiders. Their determination only served to exacerbate the situation further. Yuezheng Yan returned to the Qi family and swore an oath to punish the mistress and her two children. However, Mrs. Qi had already taken the grandchildren under her care, and Qiyun personally selected the servants for the mistress. Consequently, Yuezheng Yan's orders had no effect. Yuezheng Yan's maids and aunties were on the verge of physically assaulting the concubine when the concubine's servants intervened and reported the incident to Qiyun. In response, Qiyun issued severe punishments to the maids and aunties who had assisted Yuezheng Yan. No one dared to defend Yuezheng Yan anymore. Yuezheng Yan created a scene, behaving erratically. As a result, Qiyun ordered her to be confined to the yard, prohibiting her from leaving its confines. Unbeknownst to Yuezheng Yan, once Qiyun discovered her true nature, he began administering a medicinal soup after their intimate encounters to prevent her from becoming pregnant. Furthermore, Qiyun developed strong negative feelings toward Yuezheng Yan and ceased any further physical intimacy with her. As a result, she remained childless throughout those years. Qiyun preferred to have no legitimate children rather than allowing Yuezheng Yan to bear a child who would carry his bloodline. News of Yuezheng Yan's actions spread widely after the commotion at the Qi family. Curiously enough, it was the Qi family themselves who willingly propagated these stories whenever they were asked, demonstrating a surprising openness and lack of concern for their reputation. The entire town was both shocked and captivated by the scandalous gossip surrounding the Qi family. However, due to the tarnished reputation caused by Yuezheng Yan's actions, the prospects of finding a suitable suitor for Yuezheng Ting became extremely slim. Nevertheless, Ms.Mi Jr. remained resolute and unwavering in her determination. She refused to give up and tirelessly continued her search for a suitable match for Yuezheng Ting. She faced countless rejections and endured the mockery of people whispering behind her back. Madame Yuezheng could no longer bear witnessing Ms.Mi Jr.'s relentless pursuit. With a heavy heart, she confronted Ms.Mi Jr. Either Ms.Mi Jr. keeps Yuezheng Ting company back to the hometown so they could arrange a marriage deal, or she can dispatch one old auntie who keeps her company back to the hometown to arrange a marriage deal. Chapter 830 Shocked You. TED by BX in Zeroville. Xiomicron either of the two options would be given to them. If Ms.Mi Jr. refused to make a choice, she would be presented with the second option. Ms.Mi Jr. appeared completely possessed, displaying a strong resistance to accepting the proposal. Her rebellion provoked Madame Yuezheng to a great extent. In response, the second old master delivered a swift slap across Ms.Mi Jr.'s face, finally silencing her. Reluctant to let Yuezheng Ting return to her hometown alone, Ms.Mi Jr. decided to accompany her. Madame Yuezheng assigned her trusted auntie and a few female maids to approach the clan leader and select a suitable suitor, disregarding Ms.Mi Jr.'s input due to her consistent disapproval. If a decision couldn't be reached, a letter would be sent to Madame Yuezheng, who planned to teach Ms.Mi Jr. a valuable lesson. Upon discovering Ms.Mi Jr.'s true nature, Madame Yuezheng realized she had been deceived all these years. She lost any desire to defend and protect Ms.Mi Jr. The embarrassment and anger she felt when recalling the situation were overwhelming, as it meant she had foolishly placed her trust in a deceitful daughter-in-law for so long. Regardless of Ms.Mi Jr. and Yuezheng Ting's thoughts, they were compelled to leave the province discreetly. They had no intention of returning for at least 6 months. The Yuezheng family paid no heed to the rumors circulating in town, and with time, they faded away along with Ms.Mi Jr.'s presence. Qiao and Shao Yunduan were left in shock upon hearing the story. It became evident that Ms.Mi Jr. was indeed an eccentric individual, and her daughter Yuezheng Ting was no different. The fact that both the mother and daughter were no longer in the province brought a sense of relief. There was no longer a need to be wary of their presence. Little did anyone know that Qiao was the true instigator behind the events that transpired. However, it should be acknowledged that Yuezheng Ting had sparked the conflict initially. Qiao's subsequent actions were merely a form of retaliation. It was a matter of tit for tat. Had Qiao not possessed superpowers, she would have been the one facing harm. Yuezheng Ting would have shown no mercy towards her. Qiao was merely returning the favor in kind. For Yuezheng Ting, it might have been disheartening to marry in her hometown. However, in the long run, it might not necessarily be a negative outcome for her. Living in the province would have led to her own downfall, similar to what happened to her sister. First, Madame couldn't help but feel a sense of happiness when Ms.Mi Jr. and her daughter disappeared from their sight. And her joy only increased upon receiving Qiao's gift. So, first Madame invited Qiao and Shao Yunduan to spend the night at the Yuezheng family's residence. Since their stay was short, there were no complications in their journey back home. Yuezheng Shao also extended the offer for them to stay. Qiao and Shao Yunduan gladly accepted the invitation. The next day, Shao Yunduan accompanied Qiao as they planted papayas and dragon fruits. Yuezheng Shao and Xie Jingrong joined them, eager to witness the process. They were astonished by the appearance of the dragon fruit seeds. Qiao instructed the seeds to be sorted based on their size, as they exhibited various shapes and sizes. Carefully, they were planted in separate patches, ensuring proper spacing. Qiao believed that some preparation could be done with the dragon fruit seeds before they were planted, unlike the papaya seeds that could be directly planted without any additional steps. Chapter 831, Fruit Seeds You. TED by BX in Zeroville. Xiomicron Qiao signaled the workers to follow the height markings she had drawn. The seeds were divided into sections, first 2, then 3, resulting in the growth of multiple trees. With the trees ready, they could be planted directly into the earth. Xie Jingrong and Yuezheng Shao were both astonished by this sight. Planting fruit seeds turned out to be much simpler than they had imagined. After providing instructions to the manager on what to do and where to plant the seeds, Qiao and Shao Yunduan didn't need to visit the land again until everything was completed. However, Qiao made sure to use her superpower to strengthen the plants, ensuring their survival during the winter. Once everything was settled, they returned the orchid to Xie Jingrong. "We were fortunate enough to save the flower. We wouldn't take away something you cherished. Young Master Xie, you can have the flower back," Qiao said casually, but Xie Jingrong was taken aback. Is this the orchid one gave to Brother Shao?" Xie Jingrong asked, unable to contain his surprise. Shao Yunduan nodded. "Yes, it is. You recognized it, didn't you?" Xie Jingrong did recognize it, but he was too shocked to believe it. Thus he asked the obvious question. "Brother Shao and sister-in-law, you are simply incredible," Xie Jingrong exclaimed, filled with awe. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the living flower before him. Xie Jingrong had a deep love for orchids and possessed extensive knowledge about various precious varieties. He couldn't do anything to revive the dying flower, but he didn't want to discard it either. Thus, he entrusted it to Shao Yunduan, who came from a family with thriving plants, hoping for a miracle. However, he never expected Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian to bring him such a tremendous surprise. "Elle gave you the flower, so you should keep it?" Xie Jingrong expressed his gratitude before politely declining their proposal. However, recalling the fact that the flower had been saved by the couple, Xie Jingrong couldn't help but feel puzzled. He couldn't remember what he had given them, especially when the flower had been rescued by their efforts. Shao Yunduan turned to Qiao Xian with a smile, indicating that she should make the decision. Qiao Xian smiled back and said, "Young Master Xie, don't worry about it. I saved one bud from the orchid, and it will bloom when the weather turns warmer next year. So, you should keep the original flower after all. We didn't do much, just offered our help in whatever way we could. It might seem impressive to you because you're not an expert in this field," added Shao Yunduan with a smile. "Brother Xie, please accept it just as my wife suggested." After contemplating for a moment, Xie Jingrong accepted the flower and said, "All right then, I'll accept it. Thank you so much, Brother Shao and sister-in-law. I will cherish this and take it back." With gratitude in his heart, Xie Jingrong decided, "Okay, I will take it back. Thank you so much for taking care of them." "That's wonderful." Everyone laughed, and a sense of harmony filled the air as the matter was resolved. Xie Jingrong smiled, his admiration for the couple in front of him growing stronger. He couldn't help but appreciate their thoughtfulness and selflessness. The couple fully understood the value of the orchid, knowing how exceptionally precious it was. If Shao Yunduan had used this orchid to help Xie Jingrong secure a favorable outcome in the upcoming spring examination, it would undoubtedly provide him with a strong foundation for his future. However, they didn't choose that path. Instead, they returned the flower to Xie Jingrong. There were few individuals in the world who possessed the level of composure and emotional stability that this couple exhibited. It was a testament to their exceptional character. Chapter 832, Fruit Planting You. TED by BX Zeroville. Xiamacron M, and among those rare individuals, finding a woman like Qiao Xian was even more extraordinary. Xie Jingrong felt a sense of admiration and gratitude towards the couple, so he presented them with a pot of green first-class orchids and a pot of Song-Mei orchids. These orchids were not only rare and valuable but also possessed breathtaking beauty. Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian graciously accepted the gifts, appreciating Xie Jingrong's kind gesture. 2 days later, the papayas and dragon fruits were successfully planted. They had managed to cultivate 30 mu of papayas and 50 mu of dragon fruits, which was half of what Qiao Xian had initially anticipated. However, they viewed this as an experimental phase and were willing to take things slowly. Surviving the upcoming winter was crucial. If they could endure and thrive during this season, it would pave the way for their success in the future. Qiao Xian had a plan to gradually expand their cultivation once they had proven their resilience. Failure to survive the winter would mean the end for their endeavors. Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian diligently inspected the plants, and Qiao Xian secretly utilized her superpower to enhance their growth. She carefully infused vitality and energy into the roots, akin to providing them with the best possible nourishment. However, Qiao Xian had her limitations when using her superpower. It drained her energy, and maintaining secrecy proved to be challenging. The entire process consumed an entire afternoon. When they were finally finished, Qiao Xian let out a sigh of relief, feeling physically and mentally exhausted. She was grateful that her energy would replenish overnight, allowing her to continue her work the following day. Realizing that their efforts thus far were insufficient, Qiao Xian instructed the manager to refrain from stacking the prepared corn stalks and straw. She wanted to ensure that if a severe frost occurred, the straw could be burned to create dense smoke, providing warmth to the surrounding air and protecting the fruit seedlings. As the day grew colder, the fields required the additional coverage of straw to safeguard the delicate roots. 2 days before their departure, Qiao Xian decided to infuse more of her superpower into the plants. She planned to provide them with an extra boost of energy during their visit to the province a month before the new year when they would purchase supplies. By employing all available methods, Qiao Xian believed that the effects would prove to be favorable. After bidding farewell to First Madam Yuezheng Shao and Xie Jingrong, Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan didn't spend much time in the province. Following the fruit and seed planting, they embarked on their journey back to the county. On their way to the village, they unexpectedly encountered Ms.Zhang, who had returned once again. Spotting Ms.Zhang from their cart, they momentarily doubted their eyes. However, Ms. Zhang sneered at them with a rigid expression and swiftly departed without saying a word. Upon their arrival home, Xiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan were warmly received by their family members who assisted them in sorting through the gifts and unloading the luggage. Xiao Xian's curiosity got the better of her, and she couldn't resist asking about what had transpired in their absence. Miss Fang sneered and responded with irony, "Ah, that woman. The other night, during the rain, she came and fainted right at the doorstep of the second section of the family's home. And there she stayed. Erlang still has some lingering feelings for her after all." Yang Xiani's eyes sparkled with excitement as she eagerly prepared to share the story. Xiao Xian captured the moment in a picture, wanting to remember it. Since her divorce, Ms. Zhang had been leading a tumultuous life with her mother and the rest of the family. She was constantly sobbing, her eyes red with grief. She expressed longing for her children and husband, and she carried a heavy burden of guilt regarding her brother. Her days were filled with sorrow. Mrs. Zhang voiced her frustration, complaining that Ms. Zhang was utterly useless and that she never saw her wear a happy expression. Chapter 833, Ms. Zhang's Return You. TED by BX in Zeroville. Xiaomicronem. Mrs. Zhang's annoyance with Ms. Zhang grew stronger, as she believed her daughter not only brought no benefits to the family but also caused her precious son to be beaten. Consequently, Ms. Zhang was cast out by the Shao family and forced to rely on her mother's support. Mrs. Zhang's frustration escalated, leading to verbal and physical abuse towards Ms.Zhang. She compelled her daughter to rise before daybreak and perform exhausting labor in the fields, while intentionally depriving her of sufficient food. Ms. Zhang received only half a bowl of rice and a bowl of rotten vegetables, devoid of salt and oil. She was constantly referred to as the useless woman and trash, who only consumed without contributing anything positive to the family. This treatment left Ms. Zhang feeling deeply saddened and burdened by guilt. She believed herself to be useless to her mother's family and accepted the curses and blame as her way of atoning for her perceived sins. Silently enduring the hardships, Ms. Zhang worked even harder, convinced that it was the only way to repay her sins and earn her mother's forgiveness. Unfortunately, her physical strength waned, and she soon fell ill due to exhaustion and hunger. Ms. Zhang held on to the hope that her illness would garner care, forgiveness, or at least a decent meal, considering the tremendous effort she had put into her work. However, Mrs. Zhang responded with even more furious curses and harsh disappointment, shattering Ms. Zhang's expectations. Mrs. Zhang directed her anger towards Ms. Zhang, accusing her of intentionally falling ill to avoid work and bringing misfortune to the family as a heartless and wicked woman. She withheld any concern, care, or food from her daughter, offering only disdain and hatred. These words pierced Ms. Zhang's heart like a sharp blade. Her hope crumbled, shattered by her mother's lack of compassion. Shocked and disheartened, Ms. Zhang's motivation to work hard diminished. She became less active in labor, frequently pausing and becoming lost in her thoughts. Tears would stream down her face as she cried silently. Mrs. Zhang, however, grew even more relentless in her treatment of Ms. Zhang. She continued to berate her for being useless, emphasizing that even receiving any portion of food at home was futile, as she believed raising her had been a pointless endeavor. Zhang felt immense sadness, shedding tears in solitude every day. Unable to bear it any longer, a few days ago she impulsively fled Zhang village and embarked on a journey to Shading village, crying heavily along the way. So one morning, when Ms.Mi opened her home's door, she let out a piercing scream, nearly fainting in fright at the sight of a disheveled and distressed woman standing in the cold weather. As Ms.Mi realized that the woman at her gate was Ms. Zhang, she couldn't bring herself to allow her former daughter-in-law to collapse there. Despite her stingy and greedy nature, she couldn't leave her in such a dire state, especially considering the cold and rainy weather that could have led to her demise. Begrudgingly, Ms.Mi enlisted the help of Ms. Yan to carry Ms. Zhang into a room, where she was provided with a bowl of ginger soup. It was an act of begrudging kindness, compelled by the circumstances. In the evening, when Shao Erlang returned home and discovered the situation, he was taken aback and immediately went to summon a doctor. Overwhelmed with emotions, the couple embraced each other and wept. Shao Erlang hadn't anticipated the extent of the suffering Ms. Zhang had endured in her own home. Seeing her dressed in tattered clothing, significantly thinner, and with hands marred by wounds and scars, his heart softened. The sight of their mother in such a pitiful state brought tears streaming down the faces of their two children. Chapter 834, Their Fault You. TED by BX in Zeroville. Xiaomicronem. Shao Erlang's determination to protect Ms. Zhang and ensure her safety was unwavering. He refused to drive her away, understanding that it would only lead to her demise. Desperate, he knelt down before his parents, Ms.Mi and second uncle, pleading for their forgiveness and begging them to allow Ms.Zhang to stay. He promised to take responsibility for her, vowing to guide her and prevent her from making any further mistakes. However, he made it clear that his compassion was contingent on their acceptance of Ms.Zhang. Initially, both second uncle and Ms.Mi were infuriated by Shao Erlang's pleas. They hurled curses at him, deeming him foolish for his persistence. They reluctantly agreed to let Ms.Zhang stay, primarily for the sake of the children. Shao Erlang's relentless persuasion had worn them down, though their resentment toward Ms.Zhang was apparent. Ms.Zhang overheard their conversation and a sense of bitterness welled up within her. She had been treated as a slave within her own family, and the moment she had access to decent food and clothing, she forgot about her past misery. Now she harbored a deep hatred towards Ms.Mi and second uncle, blaming them for the circumstances she found herself in. In her mind, if they had shown her even a modicum of kindness, she would not have fallen into such a desperate situation. She held them responsible for her misfortune. Despite Ms. Zhang's troubled presence, her husband, Shao Erlang, remained the only redeeming figure within the Shao family. The rest of the family members were seen as lacking in goodness and virtue. Zhang soon caused trouble once again, and this time it seemed that her fate was sealed. Tearful apologies and kowtows ensued, forcing Ms.Mi to reluctantly tolerate Ms. Zhang's presence once more. The situation infuriated Ms. Yan, who vented her frustrations to Shao Xilang behind closed doors. In an attempt to placate his wife, Shao Xilang resorted to flattery and consolation. Only then did Ms. Yan find some solace. With Ms. Zhang back in the household, it became imperative to retrieve the divorce papers. Ms.Mi enlisted the help of Shao Erlang and several villagers from the same village to retrieve the documents from the Zhang village. It was necessary to rectify the situation, as having Ms. Zhang remain under their roof without the proper legal documentation would tarnish the family's reputation. However, to their surprise, the Zhang family, including Mrs. Zhang, proved to be peculiar individuals. They insisted that since Ms. Zhang had divorced and remarried, the Shao family must compensate them with wedding gifts before they would release the divorce papers. Since Ms. Zhang was not divorced for too long, the Zhang family called for just 30 liang as the wedding gifts. Otherwise there would be no divorce paper. Ms.Mi was utterly shocked by Mrs. Zhang's shameless behavior. She vehemently refused to offer any monetary compensation, condemning Mrs. Zhang as greedy and outrageous. In her view, 30 liang was far too exorbitant. With that amount they could easily find a new young girl to marry Shao Erlang. According to Ms.Mi, Ms. Zhang was not worth 30 liang at all. She decided not to pursue the divorce papers any further. Instead, she planned to bring Ms. Zhang back to their own family and seek out a matchmaker to find a pretty and beautiful young girl for Shao Erlang's marriage. Mrs. Zhang seethed with anger, accusing the Shao family of bullying. Ms.Mi sharply retorted, telling Shao Erlang to accompany her home. She declared that she did not need such despicable relatives. Shao Erlang was equally taken aback by the situation. He had not anticipated this turn of events. The Zhang family's demands were excessive, and their behavior bordered on harassment. Shao Erlang chose to remain silent, recognizing that further involvement would likely invite even more trouble. Eventually, someone informed the land officer about the situation. The land officer deemed the matter too humiliating for the village and intervened to restore peace. He compelled Mrs. Zhang to provide the divorce papers. The land officer regarded Ms. Zhang as fortunate that the Shao family was willing to accept her. Mrs. Zhang's demand for 30 liang as a wedding gift was considered nonsensical. She appeared to be driven solely by a desire for maximum profit, charging exorbitant amounts without any sense of reason or fairness. Chapter 835, Miserable You. TED by BX in Zeroville. Siamikronem, however, Ms.Mi had no interest in bargaining with Mrs. Zhang. She simply stated that she no longer needed Ms. Zhang and insisted that she should return to her own home. Mrs. Zhang started to panic. She wished that Ms. Zhang could stay with the Shao family, as they were living a more prosperous life. Mrs. Zhang believed that they could surely benefit from having Ms. Zhang in their household. The intervention of the land officer forced Mrs. Zhang to concede. She had no choice but to offer the divorce papers. The chaotic situation finally came to an end. People inside and outside the village ridiculed the Zhang family for their irrational behavior. The family's reputation suffered a severe blow due to having a divorced daughter and an unmarried girl in their household. The Zhang family's demand for 30 liang as a remarriage gift was seen as outrageous and embarrassing. Ms.Zhang returned to the Shao family, but she knew she would face mockery and disdain. She had become a target of hatred due to her past actions. People showed no friendliness towards Ms.Zhang. Those who used to socialize with her now kept their distance. They hurried past her or took alternate routes to avoid her. Women with children regarded her with caution, eyeing her warily as if she might dose a threat to their children. Fearing that Ms.Zhang would TRV to kidnap them for money. Ms.Zhang felt a deep sense of misery and bitterness mixed with anger. She resented those people who judged her without understanding the difficulties she had faced. She believed she had been driven to her actions. Simultaneously, Ms.Zhang harbored resentment towards Ms.Mi, the matriarch of the Shao family, and everyone else from the Shao family. She viewed them as cruel and heartless, attributing her current circumstances to their actions. No one was aware of the depth of Ms.Zhang's grudge, but she was now back in her husband's home. Hearing Yang Xiaoni and Ms. Fang's gossip, Qiao Xian found herself at a loss for words. However, she wasn't entirely surprised by the situation. Ms. Zhang, with her 2 young children, collapsed at the gate of the house. Shao Erlang, still having feelings for his wife, was determined to keep her by his side. However, given the previous incidents, people were becoming increasingly wary of her, and it seemed like a volatile situation was about to erupt. Qiao Xian doubted that Ms. Zhang would be able to stay in the second section of the family for long. She inquired, "How does second aunt-in-law treat Ms. Zhang? Is she kind to her?" "Of course not." Yang Xiaoni eagerly shared the details. She pursed her lips, expressing disdain, and replied, "Second aunt-in-law never treats her well, given what she did in the past. According to what the fourth sister-in-law told me, Ms. Zhang is not allowed to participate in any family matters. She is prohibited from entering the kitchen or being near the children. Second aunt-in-law watches her closely as if she were a thief. After breakfast, she is forced to work in the fields and is not allowed to return until lunchtime. The same continues in the afternoon, and she isn't allowed to come home until evening. They won't let her stay at home anyway, fearing she might come up with some strange ideas again. Chapter 836, Unpredictable You. TED by BX Zeroville. Xiaomicronem Qiao Xian's heart raced with concern. It was understandable that Ms.Mi might feel anxious after the previous incident. However, her current behavior seemed excessive. Qiao Xian worried that Ms. Zhang could suffer mentally from such treatment. Although Ms. Zhang had been described as narrow-minded, dumb, and extreme, her potential actions remained unpredictable. Considering that Ms.Mi had agreed to take Ms. Zhang in, it was inappropriate to treat her this way. However, Ms.Mi was not enthusiastic about accepting Ms. Zhang in the first place. It was Shao Erlang who insisted, and Ms.Mi herself was not known for being open-minded. The situation was becoming increasingly chaotic, and the future appeared uncertain to all involved. Qiao Xian confided in Ms. Fang, seeking her opinion on the matter. Ms. Fang furrowed her brows and spoke abruptly, "Your second aunt-in-law is also causing trouble with her foolishness. If she chose to take her in, she should let go of the past and be more open-minded. What's the point otherwise?" Qiao Xian expressed concern that another incident might occur, especially for the sake of the 2 young children involved. They were innocent and deserved better. In light of this, Qiao Xian pondered whether it was necessary to warn Ms.Mi after all, and shared these thoughts with Ms. Fang. Ms. Qiao's face brightened with a smile upon hearing Ms. Fang's words. "Mom, you're so understanding. You can have a conversation with second aunt-in-law, but ultimately, it's up to her whether she wants to accept it." "Exactly. I can only provide the warning, but I can't force her to listen. Their family affairs are not my concern." Soon Ms. Fang approached Ms.Mi to discuss the matter. However, Ms.Mi dismissed every word Ms. Fang said, even going so far as to label her as nosy and relishing in her supposed misery. Treating Ms. Zhang better was out of the question for Ms.Mi. She believed that Ms. Fang's intentions were to ensure they didn't lead a good life. Ms. Fang grew increasingly frustrated by this response. She vented her frustrations at home, only ceasing when Qiao Xian and Yang Xiaoni tried to console her. The warning had been given but not accepted. Nevertheless, they no longer felt guilty about not passing on the message. They would be cautious to avoid becoming entangled in their misfortune. The first section of the family had a good relationship with Ms. Yan. So when Ms. Yan came to visit, Yang Xiaoni discreetly offered her some reminders to be prepared. However, there was no need to inform others about this. Ms. Yan was taken aback by the revelation. Ms. Yen also recognized that her mother-in-law's behavior was excessive. She had not anticipated the potential mental distress that Ms. Zhang might experience or the possibility of her engaging in further unpredictable actions. Nevertheless, the warning served as a reminder and left her feeling uneasy. Ms. Yen nodded in agreement and assured Qiao Xian that she was aware of the situation. Admittedly, Ms. Zhang had a peculiar temperament, and under the treatment she received from Ms. Niu, she could potentially cause trouble once again. Ms. Yen, however, wanted to avoid getting entangled in the situation. She questioned why she had to be involved in the first place. Subsequently, people's attention began to shift away from Ms. Zhang as a significant event unfolded in the village. A military recruitment order had been issued for Shaoding village. The Ding family and the Shao family were each required to send one person to join the army. Panic spread throughout the village as families with less than 2 sons became anxious. The realization that joining the army meant potential suffering and the risk of being killed in battle made everyone desperate to prevent their sons from being drafted. The only exceptions were families too impoverished to support their child or those who harbored dislike towards their own offspring. Chapter 837, Chias Wish You. TED by BX0ville. Xiamicronem. However, the villagers in this area were leading relatively comfortable lives. No families were without a home or lacked food. Consequently, the idea of getting involved in the military recruitment was met with reluctance. Unexpectedly, Qi himself proposed to join the army, catching his family off guard. It happened right after they had enjoyed a delightful dinner prepared by Qiao Xian. Everyone was taken aback, thinking they must have misheard him. Qi reiterated his proposal, and Miss Fang immediately snapped at him, "You foolish child." She raised her hand as if to slap him, but the others intervened swiftly, preventing any harm. "Qi, don't be reckless. You can't speak of such matters so casually. Yes, we have more than enough food and clothing at home. Joining the army is extremely dangerous. Stay here with us. Going into battle as a soldier is terrifying. It's much safer to remain at home. You're still young and ignorant. Don't go, just stay with us. Listen carefully. This discussion must not leave this room or reach anyone else. I will not hesitate to deal with anyone who spreads this news." Only Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan remained silent, contemplating the situation. Qi felt deeply saddened by his family's reactions. He turned to Shao Yunduan, his 5th brother, and asked with determination, "Do you also find me ridiculous? Do you object to my proposal?" "Don't speak to him. Of course he objects. Let's end this discussion now or I will beat you." Miss Fang became irritated once again, and she was about to physically harm Qi when the others intervened and stopped her. Through sobs, Miss Fang exclaimed, "You foolish boy. You're deliberately trying to anger me. We had just started to experience happiness in our lives and now this." Shao Yunduan spoke in a gentle tone, "Mom, please don't worry. Dad, let me have a private conversation with Qi. We'll have a meaningful talk." Miss Fang and eldest uncle sighed with relief. Miss Fang nodded, saying, "Convince him to change his mind." "Don't worry, Mom." Shao Yunduan led Qi away to the study in his own yard. Inside the study, Qi lowered his head, biting his lip, visibly distressed. Shao Yunduan looked at Qi intently and let out a heartfelt sigh. Qi had grown taller and stronger. He was no longer a child. In another 2 or 3 years, Qi might even surpass his older brother in height and strength. Would he become stronger than him as well? Qi had already displayed impressive capabilities. He could hunt large animals with ease, displaying remarkable skill and agility. His sharp gaze and proficiency with the bow made him truly admirable. It was impossible for anyone to perceive him as just an ordinary teenager given his exceptional abilities. Shao Yunduan honestly didn't believe that he should confine Qi indoors. Qi, not as eloquent as his 5th brother, scratched his head and turned to Shao Yunduan. "5th brother, I can take care of myself. Please let me join the army." Shao Yunduan asked, "Are you certain about this?" Qi nodded vigorously, his determination evident. Yes. I really want to join the army. You understand that joining the army is not a trivial matter. Once you're enlisted, there's no turning back. Deserters are beheaded. When you're in the camp, you'll start as a low-ranking soldier, enduring the harshest living and eating conditions, worse than what our family has experienced in the past. If you have a harsh commander, your life will become even more miserable. Chapter 838, Deep Consideration. TED by BX0ville. Xiamicronem. Daily training will be grueling, and in times of war, soldiers like you will be on the front lines. There's a real risk of losing your life or being used as bait. Aren't you afraid of that? Xiao Yunduan questioned. Even if I become an officer as an advanced scholar from a recommended man, I may not be able to help you. Besides, the army doesn't consider where you're from. Your fate will depend solely on your own actions once you're there. Are you still determined to join the army? Xiao Xiaoqi was taken aback, but his hesitation only lasted for a moment before he nodded. Fifth brother, am not afraid. I want to join the army. I feel the need to do something meaningful with my life or ill regret it in the future. With you and fifth sister-in-law at home, I won't fear anything or have anything to be afraid of. That's enough for me. Xiao Yunduan chuckled. You're just a kid. What do you understand about the things adults talk about? Don't worry about our family. Xiao Xiaoqi smiled sheepishly. Don't answer me so hastily. Take some rest and think it over. The recruitment process won't be completed so quickly. The deadline is still a few days away. Take a couple of days to ponder on it and let me know then. Xiao Zioqi's eyes brightened. He added, Fifth brother L. No more words for now. Pretend I haven't heard anything. Go and contemplate. Don't make any impulsive decisions. Qi, this is your life and one won't interfere. But you must take responsibility for your choices and think through them thoroughly. Remember, you have loving parents and siblings who genuinely care about you. Tears welled up in Xiao Zioqi's eyes as he nodded. Xiao Xiaoqi quietly retreated to his own room to avoid his mother's scolding. Xiao Yunduan contemplated something else in the study before gathering his thoughts and heading to his parents. Miss Fang anxiously inquired, Did you stop him? Where is he? Don't worry, Mom. Xiao Yunduan reassured her with a smile. Al explained everything to him and gave him 2 more days to think it over. Mom and Dad, let's not keep nagging about this. Let's wait and see. Miss Fang declared, one will never agree to this. He's not going anywhere. I will keep him confined to a room until the recruitment period passes. I will definitely put a stop to it. Qiao Xian remained silent, observing the conversation. Xiao Sanlang rubbed his hands together and enthusiastically agreed, stating it was a brilliant idea. They should indeed do that. Xiao Yunduan sighed helplessly. Qi is a grown man, not an object to be controlled. It wouldn't be fair to confine him. L don't care. I am his mother and am doing this for his own good. Miss Fang retorted. However, she cast a skeptical glance at Xiao Yunduan. Duan, tell me, did you agree with his decision? Xiao Sanlang chimed in, Mom, of course not. Fifth brother would never be so unreliable. Xiao Dalong nodded in agreement. Absolutely, fifth brother is always level-headed. Qiao Xian pondered for a moment, then winked at Xiao Yunduan with a smile. Xiao Yunduan rubbed his nose and cleared his throat. Regardless, Mom, don't worry. Qi will do just fine. Miss Fang sighed and muttered, I still can't shake off this uneasy feeling in my heart. Chapter 839, Not for Her You. Ted by BX in Zeroville. Siamikron they couldn't reach a definite conclusion, leaving everyone in a state of unease. They sought solace in one another's company, particularly the parents, before retiring to their respective rooms. Once they were alone, Qiao Xian smiled at Xiao Yunduan. Darling, is Qi really going? And you're supporting his decision? Xiao Yunduan smiled bitterly. It appears that he has made up his mind. Besides, he's no longer a child. He has the right to make his own choices. It would be cruel to force him to stay. Xiao Yunduan didn't want Qi to go, but ultimately it was his own life, and Xiao Yunduan couldn't make decisions on his behalf. He turned to Qiao Xian. What do you think? Qiao Xian pondered for a moment and chuckled. Qi is quite capable of taking care of himself. He's not impulsive either. If you can advise him to be low profile, stay calm and prioritize his well-being, and remind him of his family whenever he's about to engage in something dangerous, I believe everything will be fine. Qi is different from his peers. He has a brother like you. Maybe you won't be able to directly take care of him once you become an advanced scholar, but in a few years, you might be able to transfer him out of the camp if it's possible. Alternatively, we can provide some financial assistance. Just look at us now. We have connections with the Xie family. If you can ask them to write a recommendation letter for Qi, it could serve as his safeguard in case he encounters any trouble. So, I believe it's a viable idea. Qi is so talented. It would be a waste for him to stay at home for the rest of his life. Qiao Xian suppressed her urge to reveal her clairvoyant abilities. After all, they were sporadic and she couldn't predict Qi's entire future. If only she could glimpse a small portion of it in secret. Xiao Yunduan smiled. Your analysis has eased my mind. Indeed, if Qi has made up his mind, he should go. I will approach the Xie family for a recommendation letter as his safeguard. With his skills, he should be able to protect himself. If the hardships become unbearable, we can find a way to bring him home in a few years. Qiao Xian smiled. That's a conservative estimate. I almost believe he has the potential to become an official with his talents. Xiao Yunduan chuckled and shook his head. That might not be necessary. The most important thing is that he remains safe and well, Qiao Xian inquired. So, how do you plan to break this news to our parents? Xiao Yunduan. That was indeed a troublesome task. Qiao Xian shook her head and raised her hands. Don't look at me. I'm not going to do it. It was evident that anyone who brought up this topic would face scolding, including Xiao Yunduan. Qiao Xian had no intention of taking on such a task. Xiao Yunduan was torn between amusement and exasperation. Of course not you, my dear. I will handle it. He wouldn't allow her to be scolded. Being his mother's son, he would shield her from any scolding. Qiao Xian chuckled. You're the best. The couple continued their conversation, sharing laughter, and eventually settled down. She was quite mischievous. He managed to avoid spending much time alone with Miss Fang and eldest uncle these days. Chapter 840, Getting Scolded You. Ted by BX in Zeroville. Xiaomicronim. Despite agreeing to let Qi think for a couple more days, Miss Fang couldn't stop worrying about the situation. She wanted to have a serious conversation with Qi, urging him to think carefully. However, Qi managed to avoid her at all costs, which only increased Miss Fang's frustration. The mother's relentless pursuit was met with the son's constant evasion, creating a sort of guerrilla warfare between them. The rest of the family found the situation amusing but refrained from laughing, fearing it might escalate the tension. Finally, the 2 days had passed and the atmosphere in the household was tense. Miss Fang, eldest uncle, Qi and Xiao Yunduan were all on edge. As the middleman, Xiao Yunduan had the weighty task of negotiating between them. But Qi remained resolute in his decision to join the army. Miss Fang snapped at him and even attempted to hit him, but her anger couldn't sway his determination. After venting her frustration, Miss Fang became overwhelmed with anxiety and broke down in tears. If you don't want to get married now, it'll stop anyone from coming to our door. Well, wait until you're willing to get married. But don't get so angry about our arrangements that you want to leave home. Miss Su and Yang Xiaoni were taken aback and didn't know how to respond. Xiao Yunduan and Xiao Xian were completely baffled by the situation. Xiao Yunduan said, Mom, what happened? Qi wouldn't leave home just because he's angry. He and Taotao won't get married unless they're willing to. We don't force them into anything. Miss Fang continued to sob and shake her head, unable to fully express her feelings. Sensing her distress, Yang Xiaoni decided to share her insights. Yang Xiaoni explained that Qi was no longer young, and as he grew older, many suitors came to the door seeking a marriage arrangement. This had motivated Miss Fang to explore potential matches for him. After all, good suitors were not always easy to find. On the second day after Qiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan had left home, a distant cousin of Miss Fang suddenly appeared at their door with her 2 daughters. Although they hadn't interacted frequently in the past, they were still family, and Miss Fang was delighted to see them. This cousin seemed to be quite lively and quickly engaged in a cheerful conversation with Miss Fang. This cousin was not here without purpose. She was here to build a martial alliance. She was trying to make Miss Fang to let Qi marry one of her 2 daughters. Miss Fang was not easily swayed by her cousin's proposition. Although they were relatives, they hadn't maintained a close relationship over the years. Miss Fang felt it was necessary to gather more information about this relative and her 2 daughters before making any decisions regarding the marital alliance. Rather than rejecting the idea outright, Miss Fang tactfully expressed that her son was still young and it would be prudent to wait for a couple more days before discussing the matter further. The cousin agreed and understood, remarking that parents were always deeply concerned about their children's well-being and should carefully consider all aspects before entering into a marital alliance. Miss Fang was relieved that she could buy some time to properly evaluate the situation and make an informed decision for her son's future. She wanted to ensure that any potential match would be suitable and compatible, taking into account both personal and family considerations. Chapter 841, Deep Night You. Ted by BX in Zeroville. Xiaomicronim. After hearing that, Miss Fang felt a pang of guilt and realized that she had been too harsh with her cousin. It seemed that her cousin was actually quite reasonable and level-headed. The two nieces appeared to be quiet, gentle, and even attractive. Perhaps they could be a suitable choice after all. Fang was almost ready to make a decision. She decided to observe Qi's reaction first and see if he was open to accepting them, before finalizing any alliance. However, she soon discovered that her distant cousin was deceitful. She was scheming to manipulate her eldest daughter into seducing Qi, hoping to force the Shao family into marrying her daughter. As the girl entered the Shao family's luxurious home, she couldn't help but envy their wealth. The house was grand and well lit, and everyone in the Shao family was adorned with jade bracelets and silver ornaments. They enjoyed plentiful meals with meat, unlike her own family who often had to make do with simple grains and rice. This made her even more jealous. Feeling desperate when Miss Fang didn't readily approve of their proposal, the girl's mother came up with a terrible idea. Despite her nervousness, she gathered her courage and reluctantly agreed to the plan. Initially, their plan was to stage a fall, pretending to accidentally stumble into Qi's arms. However, they soon realized that this wouldn't be solid evidence to convince Miss Fang. She could easily deny it and cause a commotion. It was clear that Miss Fang had reservations about them, which made her unwilling to proceed. If they only relied on a staged fall, she could easily dismiss it and create a fuss about the incident. Only when the girl's reputation was completely ruined would their deceitful plan have a chance of success. That evening after dinner, the girl made an excuse to retire early to her guest room. However, instead of sleeping, she sneaked into Qi's yard and eventually into his room. Qi had his own yard, and his room's door was left unlocked, even during the night. It was an easy task for the girl to enter unnoticed. Coincidentally, earlier in the day, Miss Fang had left Qi's blankets out in the sun to air but had forgotten to bring them back to his room. As Qi carried the blankets back to his bedroom, Miss Fang accompanied him, holding a lamp to light their way. Upon entering the room, they noticed a silhouette projected on the wall. At first they were startled, but they quickly regained their composure. Qi, known for his bravery and skill in handling crises, silently gestured to Miss Fang, urging her to stay calm. With careful steps, Qi approached and grasped the object responsible for the silhouette. The girl, caught off guard by Qi's presence, let out a scream of fright. Both Miss Fang and Qi were taken aback by the unexpected situation unfolding before them. Their shock intensified upon realizing the girl's late-night presence. What could she possibly be doing here at such a time? Soon, realization dawned upon Miss Fang, and a wave of embarrassment flushed over her. Qi, on the other hand, was instantly overcome with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. It became clear to both of them that this girl had deliberately snuck into an unmarried man's room and concealed herself in the corner with a specific motive in mind. Meanwhile, the cousin who had orchestrated this plan had been extremely anxious and completely focused on the task at hand. Although the Shao family had a sizable yard, it was not as expansive as those belonging to true noble and affluent families. Considering the proximity of the rooms, if a scream were to erupt, it would undoubtedly reach the ears of the other family members. Chapter 842, A Trick You. TED by BX0ville. Xiaomicron. The entire family was taken aback by the events unfolding before them. Upon hearing her daughter's genuine scream, the cousin felt a mix of surprise and inner satisfaction. The authenticity of the scream delighted her, as it seemed her daughter had played her part convincingly. Shao Xiaoqi, despite his gentle and introverted demeanor, had surprised the cousin with his apparent eagerness. It served as a reminder not to judge people solely based on their outward appearance. The cousin's pride swelled within her, fueling her next actions. Hastily, she rushed forward, not even taking a moment to clearly assess the situation behind the door. "Oh, my poor girl. You must have been mistreated. I will seek justice for you and ensure you don't suffer any longer." Before she could finish her words, a forceful slap landed on her face. Miss Fang, pointing accusatorily at her, screamed in outrage, "Why are you screaming? What justice are you talking about? I demand an explanation as to why your daughter is in my son's room. What devious plans have you concocted, you shameless woman?" Startled, the cousin finally noticed Miss Fang's presence. Her face filled with astonishment as she covered her stinging cheek, momentarily ignoring the pain. "Cousin, what are you doing here?" With a sneer, Miss Fang retorted, "I was here holding the lamp for my son. Of course I am here. Thankfully I am here, or else my son would have fallen into your trap." The cousin was taken aback, turning instinctively to look at her daughter, seeking answers in her eyes. It was only in that moment that the cousin realized her daughter's panic had been genuine, causing a surge of regret to wash over her. Caught red-handed by Ms. Fong, the cousin found herself in a powerless position. As an outsider to the village, she was at a significant disadvantage compared to Ms. Fong, who was the mother of the provincial champion. Moreover, the Shao family had recently made substantial contributions to the village, including building a school and donating vast tracts of land to the clan. The village would undoubtedly rally behind Ms. Fong, further isolating the cousin. The next day, the cousin and her two daughters swiftly disappeared, seeking to escape the repercussions of their actions. Ms. Fong, in order to preserve their reputation, decided to keep the incident a secret, ensuring that no one in the family would ever speak of it. However, from that point forward, she vowed to sever all ties with the cousin's family. Qi, likely startled by the entire ordeal, advised Ms. Fong against arranging any future martial unions for him. Ms. Fong couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. She refused to let Qi entertain such thoughts and resolved to find a suitable suitor, promising herself that such a situation would never occur again. Qi had no choice but to comply and refrain from mentioning the incident any further. However, on this particular day, Ms. Fong spoke of the incident, even entertaining the belief that Qi had chosen to leave home and join the army to evade any future marital arrangements. The rest of the family was left dumbfounded upon hearing this conjecture, unsure of how to respond. Eldest uncle remained silent, his disapproval evident on his somber face. Feeling helpless, Qi turned to Xiao Yunduan, his expression filled with longing and desperation. Xiao Yunduan let out a heavy sigh, his head throbbing with the weight of the situation. He decided to lead Ms. Fong and eldest uncle into the hall, seeking a private space for a conversation. Inside the hall, faint murmurs of argument could be heard, but they quickly gave way to Ms. Fang's heart-wrenching sobs. Qi felt a profound sense of sadness wash over him, and his head drooped gradually. He began to consider the possibility of relinquishing his desire to join the army if it meant alleviating his mother's distress and waiting for another opportunity in the future. However, Xiao Yunduan, through his persuasive efforts, managed to sway eldest uncle and Ms. Fong. With a sudden burst of emotion, Ms. Fong rushed out of the hall, engulfing Qi in a tight embrace. Amidst her tears, she cried, "Qi, remember that we are all eagerly awaiting your safe return. Take care of yourself and come back home unharmed." Chapter 843, Agreement uttered by Bexenville. Xiaomicron Xiaoqi's eyes lit up with joy upon hearing his parents' agreement. "Mom, Dad, you agreed?" Ms. Fong and eldest uncle couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness as they witnessed their son's elation upon receiving their approval. They realized that Qi truly desired to join the army, and it wouldn't be fair to confine him at home. They had to let him pursue his aspirations. "Yes, we did. Just remember to stay safe and come back unharmed," eldest uncle affirmed. A tinge of sadness crept into Xiao Xiaoqi's expression. He nodded earnestly. "Mom, Dad, don't worry. I will take care of myself and return home safe and sound." Okay. That's good to hear." Ms. Fong replied, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and concern. She shared a few more words of advice and encouragement with Qi, who accepted them all. Ms. Fong felt a sense of relief after receiving consolation from Xiao Yunduan and Xiao Xian. Xiao Sanlang and Xiao Dalong were taken aback by their fifth brother's support for Qi. They hadn't expected him to side with Qi in this matter. As they contemplated Qi leaving for the army in February, a sense of sadness washed over them. If their fifth brother believed that Qi would be fine, they took solace in the notion that he would ensure Qi's safety. However, a lingering worry remained. What if something were to happen? When would Qi return to visit them after this? Would it be several more years? The thought of a prolonged separation only deepened their sorrow. The entire village was in a state of chaos due to the recruitment process. The land officer had announced that anyone interested in joining the army could freely apply. However, it was widely understood that only the foolish would willingly step forward. As a result, they resorted to drawing lots. Those selected through the drawing would be obligated to join the army on behalf of the village. It was seen as a fair approach. However, to everyone's surprise, the first section of the Shao family decided to volunteer without waiting for the drawing. Qi was enlisting in the army. The news sent shockwaves throughout the village. The villagers had assumed that the first section of the Shao family would be exempt from the drawing process. After all, Xiao Yunduan held a prestigious position as a recommended man, bringing honor to the clan and sparing them from any troubles within the village. Moreover, the first section of the Shao family had already made significant contributions, donating vast stretches of land and funds for the school. These acts of generosity had earned them a level of respect and exemption from the drawing. However, those who voiced their dissent were expected to make their own contributions in the form of donations towards the fields and school before they were allowed to express their opinions. They had made such significant contributions to the village, and it was only fitting that they received certain privileges in return. That was what they rightfully deserved. However, Qi had volunteered. What on earth is the Shao family thinking? This is outrageous. Yes, how could they allow Qi to do this? It's not a laughing matter. Hell wouldn't have let him do it if I were them. Do you think that recommended man Shao has some insider information that could benefit them from the recruitment? You think they're after personal gains? No, certainly not. Despite the confusion and speculation, the matter had been settled. The Shao family breathed a collective sigh of relief and celebrated. Ms. Yen also felt relieved. She couldn't help but express her gratitude to Qi. She believed he was capable enough to ensure his own safety. If her husband had been selected through the drawing of lots, it would have been a dreadful situation. Ms.Mi and second uncle shared the same sentiment. They finally felt a sense of relief when Qi volunteered, knowing that their own son was spared from being chosen. Ms.Zhang's hands clenched tightly, her head lowered, and a coldness emanated from her eyes. Her lips twitched with disdain. She despised seeing Ms. Yen showering their parents with flattery like this. The first section of the family had never treated her well or helped her attain any form of prosperity. The most they had done for her was share some food. Yet, she still visited them whenever she found the time, seemingly content. Chapter 844. Settlement uttered by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem, shame on her. Shao Xiaoqi had decided to join the army? Something must be wrong with his head. The entire first section of the family was nothing but a bunch of fools. Well then, let him join the army and never return. Ms.Zhang cursed silently within herself. If it weren't for the first section of the family's coldness and meddling, she would not have ended up in this miserable state. None of the Ding family members were willing to step forward. Consequently, they had to resort to drawing lots. Only the family's sole child would be exempt from this process, while the rest would be included. In the end, it was Ding Jia's youngest son, Ding Jinshan, who was selected. Ding Jinshan and the entire family were in tears. The others, who felt a mix of relief and sadness, approached them to offer their condolences. And so the matter was settled. They would gather in the middle of February at the county and proceed to the province according to the government's arrangements. From there they would head north. It remained uncertain which general would oversee them once they reached the northern region. Normally this journey would take 5 years. The next day, Ding Jiazhu and Ms. Yang visited the first section of the Shao family with their son. They believed that they were in the same situation and should foster a friendship together. As soon as Ms. Yang saw Ms. Fang, she burst into tears and clutched Ms. Fang's hands. "Sister-in-law, why are we so unlucky? Our poor child." Ms. Fang's expression changed and she became displeased. She withdrew her hands and forced a smile. "Stop crying. Our sons will be fine. Perhaps they will return as officials, bringing us great honor, right?" Ms. Fang didn't actually expect Qi to become an official. She simply wanted her son to return home safely. But Ms. Yang's words seemed to carry a sense of bad luck, and she was trying to counteract that with her own optimistic remark. Ms. Yang realized that she had misspoken, feeling a bit embarrassed. However, her eyes suddenly brightened. She exclaimed, "Oh, you're right. Recommended man Shao is on his way to becoming an official, isn't he? He will take care of Qi, won't he? Let's ask him to take care of our son too. Jinshan, come and plead with recommended man Shao." Ding Jiazhu quickly grasped the opportunity and pushed his son forward, saying, "Yes, sister-in-law, we are all family. Please, recommended man Shao, you have to take care of us." Ms. Fang felt a sense of disgust rising within her. "Uncle Ding and Aunt Yang, you've misunderstood me. I still have the spring examination next year, and it's uncertain if I will even achieve the status of an advanced scholar. Even if I do, I won't be relocated to the north as an official. When they join the army, they must rely on themselves, practice diligently, and take good care of themselves. I won't be able to assist them." Ding Jiazhu wasn't entirely convinced. "Really? Then why did you allow Qi to join the army? You must believe it's a good opportunity." Qi couldn't tolerate that. "Uncle Ding, it was my own decision to seek a broader world." Ding Jiazhu responded curtly, still skeptical. "Seeking a broader world? What an excuse. This journey is fraught with danger." Ms. Yang chimed in, Regardless, you two are the closest friends and family there. You must take care of each other. Qi, you have skills like archery. My son, on the other hand, is helpless, so you must watch over him. Chapter 845. Annoyed by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem, Miss Fong and the others remained silent, processing Ms. Yang's words. Without the final sentence, Ms. Yang's remarks seemed acceptable. However, the last comment struck a nerve. Qi smiled reassuringly. Don't worry, we'll support each other. Good, that's good. Ding Jiazhu and Ms. Yang continued to nag for a while longer before departing with gloomy expressions. Ding Jinshan was still unmarried, which concerned Ms. Yang. She relentlessly searched for potential suitors for her son, hoping to secure a marriage and secure a bloodline in case Ding Jinshan faced an untimely demise. However, no respectable families were willing to accept them as in-laws in the current circumstances, unless they were previously engaged and had to expedite the wedding. Ultimately, they had to spend a considerable amount of money to arrange a wedding with a modest girl during the New Year festivities. As for the first branch of the Shao family, fewer suitors approached them for marriage alliances, and the overall quality of prospects was significantly lower. Prominent families were reluctant to marry off their daughters at this time, regardless of the Shao family's standing. However, impoverished families saw it as a golden opportunity to secure a marriage. Previously, they had never considered the Shao family, deeming them too prestigious. But the situation had changed. Shao Xiaoqi would soon be joining the army, with uncertainty regarding his return from the battlefield. Consequently, respectable families were unwilling to form a marital union, leaving an opening for families of lesser standing. The Shao family grew increasingly anxious to find a suitable bride for Shao Xiaoqi, ensuring the continuation of their bloodline. Fong was infuriated. She became so angry that she forcefully expelled the matchmaker who had brought a gambler's daughter as a potential bride for Qi. Ms. Fong snapped, declaring that Qi was not getting married and that they had not been consulted about the matter. Her outburst was seen as irrational by some elderly men from the clan. They suggested that if something were to happen to Qi, at least he could have a child to carry on the family line. Ms. Fong felt a pang in her heart, but eldest uncle found the suggestion reasonable. He added his own input, which sparked a heated argument with Ms. Fong. The other family members intervened to stop the fight, and Qi himself expressed that he did not feel the need to get married at the moment. The whole issue was eventually dropped. However, rumors began circulating about Ms. Fong. Some even claimed that she was possessed and intentionally mistreated her youngest son. Qi paid no attention to the rumors. He remained happy and content, spending most of his time hunting in the mountains. This allowed him to hone his archery skills and physical prowess. Occasionally, family members like Qiao Xian would accompany him to gather resources from the mountains, but Qi often ventured alone. Qi even extended an invitation to Ding Jinshan to join him for practice. He offered to teach him archery and share some valuable tips, although he kept the teachings from his master to himself. However, Ding Jinshan showed no interest in going, and his parents forbade him from doing so. It's too cold in the mountains and there are wild animals too. It's too dangerous, his parents protested. What's the point of practicing now? You have plenty of time to train in the military camp. It's better to rest at home, they insisted. Chapter 846. Grownup by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem Qi was at a loss for words, unable to express his thoughts further. He had exerted great effort to assist Ding Jinshan, but it appeared that his fellow villager was resistant to his help. This distressed Qi as he realized that Ding Jinshan's negative attitude could cause problems once they arrived at the military camp. Qi felt a tinge of embarrassment, unsure of how to handle the situation. In his desperation, he turned to his fifth brother, Shao Yunduan, seeking guidance. Shao Yunduan felt a sense of satisfaction, recognizing that Qi had matured and was no longer a child. However, instead of directly providing him with an answer, Shao Yunduan chose to steer Qi towards finding his own solution. He wanted Qi to think for himself and arrive at a decision independently. After some contemplation, Qi came to a conclusion. The following day, Shao Yunduan spoke, "Once we are both at the military camp, one will take care of Ding Jinshan to the best of my abilities. One will talk to him and assist him as long as I can. However, I won't allow him to become a burden to me. My parents, as well as you, my brothers and sisters, hold greater importance in my life. Ding Jinshan is merely a neighboring villager, and I will inform him of his responsibilities. If he chooses not to listen, then our relationship ends there. Xiao Yunduan nodded approvingly, wearing a smile. You're absolutely right. Do your best, but leave the rest to fate. There will be no reason for you to feel regretful. I have entrusted Manager Qin with the task of writing a letter to young Master Xie, requesting him to lend us some military books. Read them and prepare yourself. Xiao Xiaoqi felt a slight pang of surprise. He wasn't particularly fond of reading, but since this idea came from his fifth brother, he knew he had to support it. Reluctantly, he nodded and said, Fine. I will read the books and seek your guidance if I come across anything one don't understand. Xiao Yunduan nodded, his smile growing wider. Although Qi had never been fond of reading, Xiao Yunduan believed that he could teach him to read well enough to understand the military books. And that was sufficient for Qi's purpose. As the year drew to a close, Ding Jinshan got married. The Shao family refrained from hosting a grand wedding, but as they contemplated Qi's departure, their initial happiness diminished, and they began to dote on Qi. Qi, however, failed to notice any difference. While he missed his home, the anticipation of his upcoming journey and the possibilities it held motivated him greatly. During their journey, Qi once again successfully hunted a wild boar, this time weighing a whopping 150 kilograms. Dozens of people came together to collect the wild boar. Qi and the other villagers had encountered wild boars before, but none as massive as this one. The wild boar was so large that it formed a small mound in the yard. Word spread, attracting many visitors to the village who came to witness the spectacle. They marveled at the long, sharp fangs and the thick, black mane resembling steel needles, finding them intimidating to behold. Yet it was Qi alone who had managed to bring down this formidable beast. Naturally, the villagers praised his archery skills. Qi is truly remarkable with his arrows. Qi's abilities are astounding. This beast leaves me in awe. No wonder his family is thrilled to have him join the army. He's destined for greatness. You're absolutely right. People began to comprehend the underlying reasons behind Qi's family's support for his decision. Miss Fang sighed, feeling a mix of emotions. She couldn't help but worry. Her child had grown up and formed his own ideas. As his mother, she couldn't simply take control of everything anymore. Chapter 847. Mute uttered by Bexenville. The most amusing aspect was that Ding Jinshan's family, upon witnessing the wild boar and Qi's consistent success in bringing home prey each year, found themselves reinvigorated with motivation. Ding Jinshan approached Qi, inviting him to accompany him on a mountain trip and beseeching him to impart his archery skills. Qi accepted the request. However, after merely 3 days, Ding Jinshan relinquished his pursuit. He lacked experience and struggled to locate any targets. When Qi spotted an animal and instructed him to shoot, Ding Jinshan lacked the strength to draw the bowstring. The substantial wild boar was shared among those who assisted in carrying it, as well as the second and third sections of the family. A generous portion was utilized to prepare a variety of dishes to be shared with the neighbors. Nevertheless, there remained over 100 kilograms of meat. Given the surplus smoked meat and sausages this year, there was no need to produce additional supplies. Instead, they could offer them as gifts during the New Year festivities, either before or after. Ms. Fang suggested to Ms. Su that they deliver the excess meat to her family as a gift. Fortunately, Ms. Su readily agreed. Consequently, the next day both Ms. Fang and Ms. Su returned to their respective families. Each family received 15 kilograms of wild boar meat, along with a few other items. The quantity was quite substantial. Having developed a strong bond and cooperation, the first section of the family in Nis. Yen decided to present Ms. Yan's family with 10 kilograms of the meat as a gift, as they maintained a good relationship and collaborated on various business ventures. After a brief discussion, Xiao Xian decided to share some of the wild boar meat with Manager Qin and Ding Erju from Zhang village. Later, she took a moment to scoop some shrimp from the pond after inspecting the fields at Zhang village. Xiao Xian had no inclination to offer any gifts to the Qiao family. Likewise, Officer Qiao had no desire to receive any. Since Yang Xiaoni had severed ties with Yang Liang, she felt no obligation to bring any presents for the new year. Her focus was on having Shao Sanlang accompany her to visit her parents' tomb and pay respects. Someone happened to discover that the first section of the family had given Ms. Yen additional wild boar meat. This news left her feeling bitter and resentful. Attempting to embarrass Ms. Yen, she put on a fake smile and spoke about it openly. Ms. Yen was taken aback by the sudden revelation. Ms. Niu, equally surprised, inquired, "Ms. Yen, is your second sister-in-law telling the truth?" Ms. Yen, while inwardly sneering, openly admitted, "Yes, it's true. Elder aunt mentioned that my parents should also have a taste of it." "Fourth sister-in-law, you certainly have your admirers, don't you?" Ms. Zhang sneered. "Even our mother doesn't receive such honors." Ms. Yen responded quietly but firmly, "I'm not certain about that, but I often present Elder Aunt and her family with tofu, yubas and dried tofu. It seems that Elder Aunt feels the need to reciprocate." Ms. Zhang's words trailed off as Ms. Niu, who was on the verge of anger, fell silent. Indeed, Shao Xiling often brought home tofu and yuba from work, much to Ms. Niu's delight. However, Shao Xiling consistently emphasized that his in-laws insisted on sharing some with the first section of the family and some with the third section of the family. While Ms. Niu disliked the idea of sharing, she couldn't covertly claim them for herself when the Yen family emphasized the first section's entitlement. Ultimately, when she already received her share, Ms. Niu decided to let go of her argument. So when the Yen family received wild boar meat from the first section of the family and requested her daughter-in-law to bring it over, what else could she say? Could she prevent her daughter-in-law from fulfilling her duties? After all, it belonged to her in-laws. Ms. Yen didn't deliberately hide anything from her. Moreover, both of her sons were employed at the Yen family's workshop. While anger brewed within Ms. Niu, she glared at Ms. Zhang and retorted, "Focus on your own meal. You keep causing trouble without knowing the full story. What are you trying to achieve?" Chapter 848. Ms. Zhang's plan uttered by Bexenville. Siamikronem. Ms. Zhang trembled with anger, her face flushed. Yet, she lowered her head and refrained from uttering a word. Still, her anger burned within her as she cursed Ms. Yen for being sneaky and her mother-in-law for being foolish enough to trust Ms. Yen's flattering words so easily. In her view, Ms. Yen constantly flattered the first section of the family, which resulted in them showering her with treats. However, they never extended such favors to her, making her feel utterly unfairly treated. Ms. Zhang seethed with anger. With the new year approaching and the first section of the family already distributing gifts to the in-laws, she wondered what her mother-in-law's plan was. Reluctant to ask directly, she privately vented her frustrations to her husband. Shao Erlang held disdain for the Zhang family, feeling repulsed by them. Nevertheless, he acknowledged Ms. Zhang's valid point. They should present gifts to their own family during the new year. Otherwise, it would be seen as mistreatment of the daughter-in-law, causing her great humiliation. Shao Erlang mustered the courage to propose the idea to Ms. Niu. However, before he could complete his suggestion, Ms. Niu snapped, "She instructed you to ask me, didn't she? What is she thinking? Gifts for the new year? Absolutely not. Tell her to leave. It's out of the question. Tell her she can either live honestly or leave this family." Shao Erlang panicked, attempting to defend Ms. Zhang, but even his own words sounded unreasonable to his ears. Ultimately, he was scolded by his mother, failing to protect his wife. Ms. Zhang cried, overcome by a mix of sadness and anger. Weren't they supposed to forgive her for what had happened? It was all a lie. No one had forgotten that incident or truly forgiven her. She could sense that her husband still harbored resentment against her whenever the incident was brought up. But it wasn't her fault. Not at all. They were at fault too. Ms. Zhang no longer dared to mention the gifts to her mother, which filled her with guilt. However, Ms. Niu kept her away from anything valuable, and she couldn't even sneak anything out. Out of pity, Shao Erlang managed to give her some extra money. But it was so little, merely 3 qian, barely enough for anything. While Shao Erlang earned a decent income each month, Ms. Niu never shared any money with her. The thought of that irritated Ms. Zhang even more. She believed that since her husband earned the money, she deserved to receive 1/3 of his earnings. Wasn't that how it worked with the first section of the family? They put half of what they earned into shared savings and kept the other half. Frustrated and enraged, she conceived an idea when she overheard Ms. Niu discussing Shao Miling's upcoming marriage. It was said that Shao Miling's fiancé would visit in a few days. Ms. Zhang contemplated causing some trouble. She had done it before and was already disliked. If her plan failed, she would be doomed. Ms. Niu would never forgive her again. And that wretched Ms. Yen would only add fuel to the fire. Yet, every time she saw Ms. Niu, Ms. Yen, and the first section of the family, Ms. Zhang couldn't control her anger. Her heart burned with fiery hatred. It was a wretched and miserable feeling. She couldn't sleep, tormented day and night. After contemplating for a while and refining her plan repeatedly, Ms. Zhang finally decided to set her scheme in motion. She found her excuses and explanations prepared, ready to ignite the trouble she had in mind. Chapter 849, Not Deserving Utted by Bexenville. Siamacronem on that day, Ms.Zhang intercepted Shao Miling when she was in a good mood and casually mentioned her fiancé's upcoming visit before the new year. Shao Miling blushed upon hearing Yuezheng's name. Ms.Zhang sneered inwardly but sighed dramatically. I've heard about the Yu family, such a pity. Shao Miling grew slightly furious, staring at Ms.Zhang. What do you mean? Ms.Zhang responded, it's quite obvious. Shao Yunduan has become a provincial champion, soon to become an advanced scholar and an official. His father-in-law already holds a government position. He's destined for a promising future. You're his cousin but you come from a different background. Now your two brothers are making money, and your life is going to improve. However, you got engaged too early. If you had started seeking a suitor now, you might have had many suitors vying for your attention. Look at your elder aunt. She's so clever that she hasn't even engaged Taotao yet. She wants to wait until Shao Yunduan becomes an advanced scholar and find her a suitor, perhaps someone from a wealthy family. She's quite calculating, isn't she? But she's Taotao's mother after all. It's understandable that she's looking out for Taotao's best interests. However, you're also a daughter of the Shao family, and she does nothing to help you. She even allows your mother to get you engaged so early because she has her own motives, maybe even something sinister, I believe. Shao Miling bit her lip, growing pale, suddenly overwhelmed by jealousy. She had never been fond of Taotao, yet she was going to marry someone of nobility because of her brother. Perhaps she would become the wife of a young master, leading a carefree life. But what about her? She was marrying into an ordinary farmer's family. She would have to work for the household and labor in the fields. Despite her hard work, she would only receive meager income for the rest of her life. Why, her second sister-in-law had a point. She deserved a better family. Her cousin would become an official next year, while she would be the cousin of an official coming from such different circumstances. How could an ordinary farmer's family be sufficient for her? She had to admit that she wasn't as exceptional as Taotao, but couldn't she at least marry into a wealthy landlord's family? Shao Miling sneered, why didn't you say this earlier, second sister-in-law? What's the point of mentioning it now? They were already engaged. Shao Miling felt even more miserable. Zhang let out a slight sneer. She continued, Miling, it's never too late. You're not married yet, right? You can even break off the engagement. The Yu family doesn't deserve you. You have to think about it and avoid ruining yourself. Shao Miling hesitated. Breaking off an engagement could tarnish a girl's reputation, and she was well aware of that. Zhang seemed to have sensed her concerns and wore a knowing smile. Once Shao Yunduan becomes an official, you'll become the cousin of an official with a respectable family background. You'll stand out from other girls whose engagements are broken. When that time comes, no one will blame you for this stain. They'll flock to your door, begging for the chance to court you. Shao Miling's spirits were lifted upon hearing this. Yes, she would indeed be different from other girls whose engagements were broken. The Yu family didn't deserve her, and she was determined to break off the engagement with them. Only foolish people would reject such a well-thought-out plan. She refused to lead a life filled with humiliation and poverty. Chapter 850, Regretful Utted by Bexenville. Siamacronem translator. Hengyi translations. More importantly, she refused to live in the shadow of Shao Taotao for the rest of her life. She might not have the advantage of having an official brother like Shao Taotao, which was beyond her control. However, she couldn't accept being significantly inferior to Shao Taotao. Couldn't she at least enjoy the leftovers from Shao Taotao's rich meat soup? She simply couldn't settle for rough food when she had the chance for something better. Seeing Shao Miling's apparent interest, Ms.Zhang felt a sense of satisfaction. She continued to flatter Shao Miling, who slowly began to believe that she truly deserved someone better. However, Ms.Zhang soon urged Shao Miling to keep their conversation a secret. You know, I've made some foolish mistakes in the past and my mother-in-law despises me. If she finds out that I shared this solution with you, she would reject it no matter what. It wouldn't be in your best interest, would it? Shao Miling instantly gave Ms.Zhang a disdainful look upon hearing her confession. She snorted. Of course not. I want nothing to do with you. Being associated with Ms.Zhang would only bring her misfortune. Ms.Zhang felt a surge of annoyance, but she quickly forced an embarrassed smile. You're right, sister. That's how it should be. I understand. Ms.Zhang sneered inwardly. The Yu family would certainly not break off the engagement. Only fools did that. She eagerly anticipated the unfolding drama. If they didn't allow her to live a peaceful life, she wouldn't let them have one either. As expected, Shao Meiling went to Ms.Mi and tearfully announced that she no longer wanted to marry into the Yu family. She cried and vented her grievances. Then Shao Meiling revealed to Ms.Mi what she had learned from Ms.Zhang, leaving Ms.Mi filled with regret and hesitation. If only she had known that Shao Yunduan would become the provincial champion, she wouldn't have rushed to find a suitor for Shao Meiling so soon. Once Shao Yunduan achieved the title of advanced scholar and obtained an official position, there would surely be numerous better families for them to consider. Nyo felt a deep sense of regret as these thoughts consumed her. She began to question whether the Yu family was truly suitable for them. She also expressed her grievances toward the first section of the family. The first section of the family should have known about Shao Yunduan's talent and potential to become a recommended candidate. Yet Miss Fong remained silent. How terrible. And as for their elder brother, all he did was talk without taking any action. He failed to provide them with any updates or information, nearly jeopardizing Meiling's future. Nis. Nyo pondered over the situation repeatedly, feeling confused and troubled. Eventually she sought out her second uncle and asked for his advice. Second uncle blamed her, stating that the engagement had already been arranged and the wedding was scheduled to take place shortly after the new year, or at the latest by the end of the following year. Breaking off the engagement so easily would tarnish their daughter's reputation. However, second uncle fell silent after hearing Ms. Nyo's analysis. After some contemplation he responded, breaking off the engagement doesn't seem like an easy task. The Yu family is eager to become our in-laws, and they are unlikely to agree to it. Ms. Nyo grew increasingly frustrated. Yu Xiaomiao is no longer worthy of being our daughter's spouse. It shouldn't be up to them whether they want to continue or not. We can offer them some money to end the engagement. Although typically frugal with money, Ms. Nyo believed that securing a better marital prospect for her daughter was worth the expense. Convinced, second uncle agreed, saying, "All right then, find a trustworthy person who can negotiate with the Yu family regarding the cancellation of the engagement. Just state that the bride and groom's horoscopes do not align, and it is best to call it off." That sounds reasonable. And what about the money? Second uncle hesitated when it came to reimbursing the money they had received. How about 5 liang? Or perhaps 10? No, 8 liang should suffice. Chapter 851. The Yu family's fury uttered by Bexenville. CM 8 liang was already a significant amount for them. Many families struggled to save even 8 liang within a year. Ms. Nyo nodded in agreement. It would be wise for them to act sooner rather than later. The next day Ms. Nyo hurriedly set out to find a matchmaker. Ms.Zhang observed her actions and had a vague understanding of her intentions. She silently sneered. The matchmaker had already profited from Ms. Nyo and decided to accompany her on the visit, although she found the entire situation ridiculous. As expected, the Yu family reacted with anger. What are they talking about? Are they joking with us? We've exchanged birth dates and everything matches. They simply don't think we're good enough for them. We won't tolerate being bullied like this. There's no way we're breaking off the engagement. Or I can share this story with others and gauge their opinions. Absolutely. It's non-negotiable. The Yu family was delighted to learn that Shao Yunduan had become a provincial champion. Although Shao Meiling was not Shao Yunduan's sister, she was his cousin after all. If they encountered any difficulties and sought his help, he would never turn them down. Moreover, the martial alliance would greatly benefit their family's reputation. The Yen family also had a prosperous workshop. By establishing a martial connection between the two families, the Yu family might even secure employment at the Yen family's workshop. Earning 1 or 2 liang per month for easy work. What a fantastic opportunity. Additionally, the Shao family had established a school in Shaoding village, and their children could attend classes there without paying tuition fees. These were all advantages of the martial alliance. Only foolish individuals would forfeit such an opportunity. In a surprising turn of events, the Shao family decided to call off the engagement, seemingly due to a sudden lack of confidence. But the Yu family was determined not to let that happen. It was an incredibly humiliating situation. The matchmaker, recognizing the unreasonableness of the Yu family, quietly slipped away instead of engaging in an argument. Blamed and scolded by the Yu family, the matchmaker felt irritated. When passing on the message to Ms. Nyo, she added some inflammatory remarks, further fueling the fire. Ms. Nyo was also seething with anger. She slammed her hand on the table and cursed, "What a foolish family. Unreasonable people. We will never marry Miling into their household. She would only suffer. We refuse to proceed." Ms.Mi appeared to have found a justifiable excuse to continue with her decision. Taking matters into her own hands, she personally went to the Yu family. Ms.Mi hurled vulgar words at them. Even when she offered to repay them with 10 liang, they engaged in a heated argument that eventually led to a complete dissolution of the engagement. The Yu family was the aggrieved party, but they feared that if Ms.Mi sought help from the esteemed Shao, they would be powerless to intervene. To gain sympathy and support, they shared their ordeal with others. The Shao family's arrogance knew no bounds. Such bullying was unprecedented in their eyes. After they had already exchanged birth dates, they suddenly decided to call off the engagement? The news of this development quickly spread throughout Shaoding village, reaching every household. Miss Fang expressed her disbelief, cursing, "What has gotten into these two? How could they act so unethically? They don't seem to care about the reputation of either the Yu family or their own daughter." Qiao Xian let out a sigh, sharing the sentiment. No respectable family would be willing to establish a marital connection with them now, given their reputation for snobbishness. Even if there were wealthy families interested in marrying Shao Miling, she might end up as a concubine or face bullying after the marriage, considering the circumstances. Chapter 852, Saving People uttered by Bexenville. CM Translator. Henyi translations. Indeed, the intricacies of a marriage are often invisible to those outside of it. Only the couple themselves truly understand what goes on within their relationship. Each person must live their own life, making choices that are best for them. In light of these events, Miss Fang's concern for Taotao grew. Qiao Xian reassured her with a smile. "Don't worry, Mom. We come from different sections of the family. If anyone assumes we are the same, we don't need to consider such a suitor. Trust me, Taotao will surely marry a good man." Miss Fang found some solace in these words. However, Ms.Mi did not anticipate that the Yu family would spread the news, causing her immense anger. She vented her frustration through vehement curses at home. Shao Miling was consumed by anger, constantly shedding tears within the confines of her home. Ms.Mi and second uncle sought help from Miss Fang and elder uncle. "Brother, sister-in-law, you must help us." Ms.Mi's tearful plea only fueled Miss Fang's fury. "What right do you have to cry? This is all your own fault. If you didn't want to go through with the marriage, you shouldn't have arranged it in the first place. No one forced you into this. You exchanged birth dates and even set a wedding date. And now you break it off? It's highly unethical. The Yu family is a good family that has been humiliated. Of course they are upset. Wouldn't you be upset in their position? Elle didn't want to. But it's all your fault." Ms.Mi snapped at Miss Fang. "If you had informed us that Yunduan would achieve such success, we wouldn't have arranged a marriage for Miling. But you purposely concealed the truth, and you don't even want Taotao to find a suitor. You must have done that intentionally." "You." Miss Fang was infuriated by these accusations. Whether Yunduan would become a recommended man was uncertain for everyone. "What nonsense are you spouting? It's utterly ridiculous. And I haven't found a suitor for Taotao because I don't think she should get married right now. How is that even relevant? Any more nonsense like this and he'll slap it right across your face." Ms.Mi's eyes widened, clearly unconvinced, but she chose not to engage in further argument. Times had changed. After Shao Yunduan became the provincial champion, the second branch of the family was no longer as confrontational as before. They might still be bothersome but not as forceful. However, second uncle chimed in. "Elder sister-in-law, let it go. It's already over. But you must help Miling or her life will be ruined." "Yes, that's exactly what one mean. The Yu family is nothing but bullies. They're spreading these stories just to tarnish Miling's reputation. They were never a suitable match anyway." "Absolutely true." Seeing the couple agree with each other in a reasonable manner, Miss Fang was too exhausted to make any further complaints. The room fell into a heavy silence. Even eldest uncle, who had always held his brothers in high regard, was visibly flushed with anger. Clearly the blame rested with the second branch of the family. Miss Fang regarded them with disdain. "So, your daughter is the only one with a reputation to protect? What about their son? You exchanged birth dates and the wedding date was about to be finalized. And now you want to break off the engagement? How can that be considered reasonable? Furthermore, they seem to be expecting Shao Yunduan to come to their defense, as if he held some influence. Miss Fang retorted, "You initiated the engagement, so it's your responsibility. You have to resolve the matter with the Yu family yourselves. We can't be of any assistance. And neither can Yunduan. What do you expect from him? To use his position to bully the weak? He would never engage in such unethical behavior." Chapter 853, Unethical uttered by Bexenville. Ms.Mi eldest uncle felt a sense of pity for Shao Miling, unaware that Ms.Zhang had influenced her with the idea. He had intended to interject, but halted upon hearing Ms. Fang's words. It was clear that this couple had come to their doorstep not seeking the help of ordinary people like him and Ms. Fang, but rather aiming for Yunduan's assistance. As he contemplated this, eldest uncle grew increasingly uneasy, realizing that they were trying to manipulate Yunduan into using his limited authority to retaliate against the other family. This deeply troubled him. Such behavior was unquestionably unethical. "That's not what we mean." Second uncle and Ms. Nyo didn't dare to admit it. "This marriage isn't a good match and we have every right to call it off. We even offered to pay them back 10 liang, but they still refused to let go. Now the whole situation has become public, and Miling will suffer greatly if she marries into that family. Elder brother, elder sister-in-law, you've seen Miling grow up. You can't just abandon her like this, can you?" Miss Fang sneered. "But you are the ones who created this mess. It's utterly unreasonable to expect us to take over and clean it up." Elder uncle carefully pondered the situation before speaking up. "Miss Fang, let's calm ourselves down. There's no use complaining when things have already reached this point. We need to come up with a solution to prevent Miling's life from being ruined." "True, elder brother is right." Nyo and second uncle nodded in agreement. Miss Fang sneered inwardly, convinced that Miling's life was already in ruins. If only Miling had the capacity to comprehend it, she would have despised her parents for their actions. Miss Fang chimed in, "What if Miss Qiao and I accompany you to the Yu family and help you reconcile, so that the two families can reunite?" No, that wouldn't work." "Why not?" "Miling will be subjected to bullying in such a situation. Then let the Yu family make a promise. Yunduan should be able to help you. We can all live in peace, and if anyone bullies Miling and the news reaches us, we won't forgive them for it." Elder uncle's eyes lit up and he added, "I think it's a good idea. Whenever you have the opportunity, ask Miling how she feels about it. We will seek justice for any girls who are bullied within our family, of course. If Miling faces any mistreatment, Yunduan can step in. What do you think, brother and sister-in-law? I believe it's a reasonable solution. The Yu family isn't foolish enough to intentionally harm Miling." Ms. Nyo and second uncle exchanged a bewildered glance with each other. This wasn't what they had intended. They had wanted to break off the engagement. However, Miss Fang had already spoken resolutely, and elder uncle had agreed. Shao Yunduan would likely heed his parents' advice as well. Ms. Nyo and second uncle gritted their teeth in anger, their words failing them. Elder brother and elder sister-in-law are so heartless. They must have deliberately orchestrated this. They don't want a bright future for Miling. This is all your fault. Why did you rush into making a decision about Miling's engagement? Damn you. Miling is no longer a child. She's old enough to have suitors. I had no idea that Yunduan would become a provincial champion or hold an official position. If I had known, one would have called off the engagement. It's all because of elder sister-in-law concealing everything from us. Chapter 854, Braver uttered by Bexenville. Ms. Nyo and second uncle sighed repeatedly, feeling distressed and helpless. Shao Miling, on the other hand, was seething with anger and disappointment upon hearing the outcome. She cried incessantly and threw tantrums, declaring that she would rather die than marry into the Yu family. She couldn't bear to see Shao Taotao living a better life than her. Nyo and second uncle were somewhat swayed by their daughter's intense reaction. Their already negative opinion of the marriage worsened as they witnessed her emotional turmoil. But if the first section of the family refused to offer any assistance, what options did they have? The couple frowned, constantly mulling over the dire situation. Meanwhile, Ms.Zhang couldn't help but sneer inwardly, reveling in the chaos that had befallen the family, thanks to her cunning manipulation. Feeling a surge of arrogance, she concluded that her mother-in-law's family was utterly foolish, oblivious to being deceived. Encouraged by her perceived superiority, Ms.Zhang grew bolder and conceived another idea. The Yu family doesn't want to break off the engagement because they see our family as promising, hoping to gain benefits from us. But you are fifth cousin's cousin and Taotao is his real sister. If he could marry Taotao, I believe the Yu family would gladly accept. What are you implying? Do you think I'm inferior to Taotao? Shao Miling snapped. Ms.Zhang said, absolutely not. You've misunderstood me. One believe you are far superior to Taotao. What I meant was that the Yu family would see marrying Taotao as a more advantageous arrangement for them, as they could benefit more from it. Shao Miling snorted, clearly displeased with the situation. However, she reluctantly admitted that Ms. Zhang's assessment had some truth to it. But don't mock us any further. Elder Aunt would never allow Taotao to marry into the Yu family. They aren't that kind-hearted. They would never allow Taotao to replace her as the bride. She had never even entertained the thought. A sinister smile crept across Ms. Zhang's face as she sneered, but what if that man from the Yu family forces something upon Taotao, and Taotao has no choice but to marry him? Shao Miling was taken aback, her eyes widening with curiosity. Tell me more. Ms. Zhang spoke in a mysterious tone. Yu Xiaomiao is coming here to bring us gifts, right? Let's gather the first section of the family and the third section of the family for a dinner. And when they have some drinks? Shao Miling was surprised, a newfound understanding dawning upon her. I see. Enlighten me further. That seemed like a viable solution. Since the first section of the family had refused to help them and had effectively ruined her life, Shao Miling felt no remorse towards them. She warned Ms. Zhang, never speak a word about this to anyone ever. Shao Miling understood that it was not an honorable plan to be proud of, and it should remain a secret. Ms. Zhang agreed, knowing that discretion was crucial. Shao Miling approached Ms.Mi with a sense of satisfaction, her confidence bolstered. Ms.Mi was taken aback upon hearing Shao Miling's idea. But as she contemplated the situation, she realized something profound. It was a brilliant idea. Wasn't it too harsh on Taotao? Well, Miss Fang had been cruel to them first, and they were merely reciprocating. The first section of the family had started it, and now the second section of the family would return the favor. Since Miss Fang had believed that the Yu family was a suitable match, why not have Taotao marry into the Yu family? It would be a perfect fit, wouldn't it? Ms.Mi pondered over the idea, considering the best course of action. They needed a well-thought-out plan to ensure they wouldn't be caught by the first section of the family. Every detail had to be carefully executed, leaving no traces behind. Furthermore, they needed to establish a cooperative relationship with the Yu family, ensuring that Yu Xiaomiao would be on board with their plan. Ms.Mi had no doubts about the outcome. The Yu family would not be foolish enough to reject a marriage proposal for Shao Yunduan's younger sister. Chapter 855. The Invitation Uttered by Bexenville. CM The first section of the family had expected the second section of the family to continue making a fuss about the situation, but to their surprise, it abruptly stopped. They let out a collective sigh of relief, grateful for the respite. Miss Fang voiced her opinion. I'll think that they must have realized that it is an unreasonable thing and we want help them. Indeed, it seemed that the second section of the family had come to the same conclusion. Ms.Mi and second uncle approached the first section of the family once again, wearing guilty expressions and suggesting that they could proceed with marrying Shao Miling off to the Yu family instead. Recognizing that they were all part of the same family, the first section of the family agreed readily, promising to support them if the Yu family were to mistreat Shao Miling. Feeling reassured, the second section of the family then mentioned that Yu Xiaomiao would deliver the presents in 3 days and invited the entire family to join them for dinner. The purpose was to showcase the unity within the family and to instill some fear in the Yu family, preventing them from seeking revenge. Both Miss Fang and eldest uncle agreed wholeheartedly. With that, Ms.Mi and second uncle left with happiness in their hearts. Yang Xiaoni couldn't help but wear a smile as she addressed Qiao Xian. Did I misunderstand? Are second aunt-in-law and second uncle inviting the entire family for dinner? I thought it would only be our parents, fifth sister-in-law and fifth brother. Qiao Xian chuckled, acknowledging that her third sister-in-law had a point. The second section of the family wasn't known for their generosity, so it was unexpected for them to invite the entire family instead of just the key members. Considering the first section of the family had a large number of people including children, it would certainly be a bustling affair. Qiao Xian jokingly remarked, maybe second aunt-in-law and second uncle are feeling quite guilty and want as many of us as possible to support them when facing the Yu family. The idea sounded plausible to both of them. Young Xiaoni sighed and nodded in agreement, saying, "Indeed, Miling is their daughter, and they want to ensure her future happiness. For the sake of their daughter's happiness, attending one dinner was a small price to pay. If it weren't for the intervention of someone from the Yu family approaching Ms. Fang and Shao Yunduan, the first section of the family would have held on to their belief all along." Meanwhile, at the Yu family residence, Ms.Mi made a secret visit to her future in-laws and shared her plan. Mrs. Yu was persuaded and agreed to the arrangement. As long as they executed the plan effectively, it was crucial for Yu Xiaomia to cooperate. He didn't need to know the details and he wouldn't face any blame. They were well aware of the advantages that came with marrying the sister of an official. Nobody in the village would dare offend them, and the official would always prioritize the well-being of his sister. While the Yu family wasn't inherently greedy, they wouldn't pass up on such an opportunity for financial gain. Upon receiving the Yu family's assurance, Ms.Mi felt elated. It was an irresistible temptation that no one could refuse. Officials needed to maintain strong connections with other influential families. After Taotao's marriage, Shao Yunduan would no longer have a sister, and he would need to forge a marital alliance with another family. Miling was the most suitable candidate for him to consider. Chapter 856. Disorganization uttered by Bexenville. Maybe Miling could marry into an official's family and become the wife of an official. This idea further fueled Ms.Mi's determination. She was determined to make it happen no matter what. However, when Mrs. Yu shared the plan with her husband and Yu Xiaomiao, they exchanged a glance and immediately dismissed the idea. You even criticized Mrs. Yu for entertaining such a ridiculous notion. Ms.Mi's idea is preposterous. Why are you even considering it? Provincial champion Shao is a highly intelligent individual who can see through such schemes. Regardless of whether the plan succeeds or not, we would antagonize many people. The second section of the family is his own family and he wouldn't target them. But we are outsiders. Have you thought about the consequences? Mrs. Yu remained unconvinced. But Shao Taotao will be our daughter-in-law and we are family as well. The first section of the family wouldn't harm their own daughter. We're not greedy people. We just want to live a decent life, that's all. Yu Xiaomiao sneered. Mom, he is the provincial champion and possesses various means to deal with us. If they seek revenge by ruining our siblings, do you have any control over that? The Yu family could never bear such consequences. Mrs. Yes' expression changed. No, it's impossible. We will be relatives by that time and they would never stoop so low. Of course they would. Have you not heard what happened to the Zhao family? Mrs. Yu fell silent, her face turning pale. Indeed, she was well aware of the circumstances surrounding the Zhao family. Not everyone was oblivious to the truth. Young Master Zhao had some inkling about the first section of the Shao family's daughter-in-law, and soon after, they mysteriously vanished. People began to connect the dots and realized that there must have been some connection. The downfall of the Zhao family was evident. They deserved punishment, but the extent of the retribution seemed excessive. No one dared to question the Shao family's actions. No one dared to voice their approval either. Mrs. Yu remained stubborn, speaking through gritted teeth. But Taotao will be our daughter-in-law, and if they dare lay a finger on my son and daughter, I will make sure their daughter learns a lesson. It's only fair as one would be her mother-in-law. Yu Xiaomiao sneered even more, his anger evident in his voice. You're really willing to entertain that thought, Mom? If you retaliate against their daughter, they could take it out on me. They might even divorce us. Provincial champion Shao is on the path to becoming an official, and even if he doesn't, the Shao family has many influential members who would never allow their sister to be mistreated. Mrs. Yu opened her mouth to respond but found herself at a loss for words. It was true, in reality she was merely playing with empty threats. She lacked the courage to actually confront anyone. Mr. Yes' glare intensified. Now you realize how wrong you were, don't you? How could you agree to such a plan? I never knew you could be like this. Mrs. Yu felt her heart shatter but found herself unable to respond. She murmured, but I already made a promise to Ms.Mi. Father and son continued to glare at her, their disappointment evident. She gathered her courage and straightened her back. Why are you glaring at me like that? I'm doing this for Xiaomiao and for the sake of our family. Mr. Yu furrowed his brow, contemplating that once Xiaomiao got married, they should live separately. The two sons should reside in different places. They would live with their eldest son, whose wife would be in charge. Mrs. Yu would have no authority and would simply take care of her grandson and do some household chores. That would be her role. She couldn't be in a position of authority or it would lead to trouble. Xiaomiao interjected, "That's your problem. I'm going to the Shouting village to inform the first section of the family about this." Chapter 857, Truth Uttered by Bexenville. See him what? No way. But that's how it should be. They'll be so humiliated. Ner. You shouted in anger. You talk about humiliation? Xiaomiao is right. We should inform Provincial Champion Shao about this. It's their family matter and we shouldn't interfere. We can break off the engagement and demand compensation of no less than 10 liang. Not a penny less. They didn't like the way things had turned out, but it was pointless to continue. They could gain a new daughter-in-law with the compensation. However, Xiaomiao had his own plan. Well, see, Mr. Yu understood his child. He had his own ideas, so he didn't press the matter further. Besides, he didn't want to discuss it any longer. His son could do as he pleased as long as he didn't blame his parents for it. It was good that he wasn't as confused as his mother, so he didn't go overboard. As evening fell, Xiaomiao went to the first section of the Shao family. Recognizing him, Miss Fang put on a friendly expression and invited him inside. Miss Fang felt a twinge of guilt about the humiliation caused by the second section of the family. Xiaomiao mentioned that he had a few private words to speak with Provincial Champion Shao, which should remain between them. Miss Fang was puzzled, but she still went to ask Shao Yunduan. Shao Yunduan invited Xiaomiao to join him in the study, where Qiao Xian was already present. As Miss Fang was about to leave, Xiaomiao smiled at her and gestured for her to stay. It was an awkward and embarrassing situation, and Xiaomiao stumbled over the story. Miss Fang's anger flared up as she snapped, "How dare she? Oh, how dare she? She intends to frame Taotao. She's insane. They'll make sure she pays for this." Qiao Xian intervened, "Mom, don't get worked up. She won't succeed. She should be the one feeling angry, not us." "I knew it. How could she suddenly be so generous and invite us all to dinner? She wants to carry out her plan when there are many people present." Qiao Xian began to piece it all together. It had been confusing for them as well. No wonder they say that when rules are broken, something is amiss. Xiaomiao soon finished explaining the story. "I apologize for my mother's confusion. My father and I didn't think it was a good idea at all. That's why we decided to inform you about this. Perhaps it's better this way." "I'm sorry?" Miss Fang's gratitude towards Xiaomiao grew. She said, "We understand indebted to you. If not for your revelation, we would have been framed. I apologize and thank you. That's what we should do. All right then. I should be on my way." As it was getting late, Miss Fang and Shao Yunduan escorted Xiaomiao out. Upon returning to the study, Miss Fang was seething with anger, wishing she could confront Ms.Mi right away. "Yunduan, Qiao Xian, what do you think?" Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan exchanged glances, and after a moment Shao Yunduan spoke up, "We have only heard Xiaomiao's account, and we cannot be certain of the truth." Miss Fang was taken aback, her brows furrowing. "I don't believe he is lying. It's just like something your second aunt-in-law would do." Xiaomiao. A story brought back so many memories for her. Qiao Xian explained with a smile, "Mom, my husband means that regardless of our intentions, we shouldn't blindly trust the words of one person. We should investigate and gather more information, or we might easily fall victim to framing." Chapter 858, Waiting Uttered by Bexenville. Siam Miss Fang comprehended the message. "I'll understand. You're advising me not to act impulsively." She knew Ms. Nyo's character, but what if someone else was involved? If she blindly believed that person and acted rashly, she could have made a grave mistake. Things were different now. She may have made mistakes in the past, but what if her son was implicated this time? Qiao Xian smiled. "Mom, you're so perceptive. It's just a gentle reminder." Miss Fang sighed, a smile forming on her face. "Then remind me as much as you can. I'll keep them all in mind." Shao Yunduan glanced at Qiao Xian with a tender expression. Having a wife who understood him and stood by his side brought him a happiness he couldn't find elsewhere. After a moment, Miss Fang clenched her teeth. "But I believe this is exactly what your second aunt-in-law would do." "Let's catch her in the act," suggested Shao Yunduan. "Confronting her now wouldn't yield any admission. We have no evidence. She would likely accuse Xiaomiao of harboring resentment over the broken engagement and attempting to frame her. It would only complicate matters further." Ms. Fong felt a wave of enlightenment. That's absolutely true. Ms. Nio's actions were indeed predictable. Alright, then let's catch her in the act. Should we inform Taotao about this so she can be prepared? Xiao Yunduan and Xiao Xian exchanged a glance and Xiao Yunduan nodded. Yes, we should let her know. We'll discuss the plan further tomorrow. But let's keep this information from Dad for now. Xiao Yunduan couldn't rely on his father, who often seemed oblivious to such matters. Ms. Fong chuckled. Of course not. You would never believe us. Head go console the second section of the family, fearing they might be wrongly accused. Ah. Xiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan exchanged a bemused look as Ms. Fong left the room. Xiao Yunduan's expression turned serious as he sighed, massaging his forehead. Things would have been much simpler if he hadn't decided to pursue a career as an official. He now had to consider numerous factors, and it was hard to determine if his family might become the target of some conspiracy. Thankfully, his mother possessed a clear mind. Xiao Xian sighed. Yu Xiaomiao seems like a level-headed person. Xiao Meiling is fortunate to marry him, and it's surprising that the second aunt-in-law refuses to believe it. Xiao Yunduan smiled. I'm not sure what makes her so confident. Xiao Xian pondered for a moment and smiled as he asked, Yu Xiaomiao is quite intriguing. I believe he still wants to marry Meiling. What do you think? Xiao Yunduan nodded, a grin forming on his face. It would be ideal if he marries Xiao Meiling. He seems capable of keeping her in check. As cousins from the second and first sections of the family, Xiao Meiling was known for her strong-willed and outspoken nature. Once she was married, it would be challenging to rein her in. If someone were to try and manipulate her, she might even become a force to be reckoned with. If her husband possessed the ability to manage her and handle situations wisely, it would make things much smoother. Otherwise, they could face considerable trouble in the future. When that time came, it might not be possible for the first section of the family to remain uninvolved. Xiao Yunduan was delighted to assist Xiao Meiling in marrying into the Yu family, rather than allowing her to choose an uncertain partner. The second aunt-in-law opposed this potential son-in-law, hoping that Taotao would take over instead. However, Xiao Yunduan had no intention of allowing that to happen. He wanted to show her the consequences of her actions, to make her understand the meaning of reaping what you sow. They engaged in a lengthy discussion about the plan before finally retiring for the night. Chapter 859, Waiting Utted by Bexenville. CM The anticipated day arrived when Yu Xiaomiao came to present the gift. To ensure the success of their plan, the second section of the family spared no expense. They had 2 plump chickens slaughtered, braised 2 fish, and procured a variety of meat. They even had Xiao Sileng bring tofu, yubas, and dried tofu from the Yan family the day before. Ms. Yan, unaware of the scheme, interpreted her mother-in-law's generous gesture of inviting the first and third sections of the family for dinner as a sign that they had reconsidered and accepted the marriage. Thus, she actively offered her assistance. Only Ms.Zhang's eyes gleamed with excitement, as if her heart was leaping with anticipation. She couldn't wait to witness the spectacle unfold. Yu Xiaomiao arrived at 10 in the morning, and Ms. Nio, along with second uncle who still believed he was on their side, greeted him joyfully. Second uncle pulled him aside, speaking in a hushed and smiling voice. You need to pretend to be drunk but not actually drunk. They'll have the brothers guide you to the wing room. Once the girl is there, you know what to do. Just remember not to go overboard. It was all part of the show, not a genuine move. Taotao would be defenseless if she ended up in the same room as Yu Xiaomiao. Second uncle certainly didn't want Yu Xiaomiao to make any real advances towards Taotao under his roof. It wouldn't bode well for his reputation. Yu Xiaomiao chuckled inwardly, then turned to his future father-in-law, nodding earnestly. But he couldn't help but wonder who would be accompanying him in the room. Ms. Nio instructed her 2 daughters-in-law to prepare 2 tables filled with delicious food and gathered the entire family together. Yang Xiaoni openly praised Ms. Nio for her generosity, which made Ms. Nio feel uneasy. Generous? She was coerced into this. She had no desire to do any of it. Xiao Lulang was absent. Third uncle claimed he was too busy studying and couldn't join for lunch. Nio and second uncle had invited so many people with the intention of creating chaos, making it easier to execute their plan. They also wanted witnesses to avoid any potential denials. Xiao Lulang's absence didn't concern them. Eldest uncle expressed great concern for Xiao Lulang, saying emotionally, Lulang is working so hard now. Please take care of him and make sure he doesn't overexert himself. Ms.Mi sighed, feeling worried. She refrained from boasting about her son as she had done before. Third uncle beamed with pride. Lulang must have thought it through. I'm confident he'll make it next year. He's ambitious and he promises us a future filled with happiness as he pursues his path to becoming an official. The table was set with various dishes, and Shao Xiaoji, Taotao, and Ms.Zhang enjoyed their meal in the kitchen with Shao Miling, while the rest of the family gathered around the table in the hall. The table was filled with an abundance of dishes, and 2 jars of wine were prepared. Second uncle opened the wine and invited everyone to join in the drinking. Ms. Fang discreetly glanced at Ms.Mi, who was far from stingy when it came to pouring the wine. She encouraged everyone to drink as much as they could. Ms. Fang cursed inwardly. That woman only showed generosity when she had ulterior motives. If given the chance, she would give her a thorough scolding. Yu Xiaomiao appeared to be heavily intoxicated as he reached the halfway mark. His face had turned red, and it was evident that he was truly drunk. Chapter 860. Coldness uttered by Bexenville. CM third uncle playfully teased second uncle. Looks like your son-in-law has a low alcohol tolerance. He's already drunk after just a little wine. People have different drinking capacities. He's drunk so he needs some rest. We can continue celebrating, second uncle replied with a smile. He then turned to Shao Sanlang and said, Shao Sanlang, help Yu Xiaomiao to the wing room with Qi for some rest. Shao Sanlang and Qi were unaware of the situation but agreed to assist, helping Yu Xiaomiao up from his seat. Ms.Mi stood up as well. I'll guide you in. Help him. Once Yu Xiaomiao was settled, Shao Sanlang and Qi returned to the hall, and Ms.Mi followed closely behind. She exchanged a few words in the kitchen, not to share any important information, but to provide Shao Miling and Ms.Zhang with some subtle cues. Ms.Mi walked briskly, feeling a sense of anticipation. She was eager to witness the unfolding drama. After completing her task, she planned to find an excellent match for her own daughter, making Taotao envious for the rest of her life. Shao Miling and Ms.Zhang exchanged a knowing glance and couldn't help but feel pleased. Soon they finished their meal. Shao Miling mentioned that she had something to discuss privately with Taotao. Shao Xiaoji felt slightly displeased being left alone. However, with Shao Miling's impending marriage, the cousins decided to set aside any grievances during this joyous occasion. So Taotao followed Shao Miling to another location. Taotao's heart sank, overcome by a chilling sense of unease. If her mother hadn't given her a warning beforehand, she would have been completely unprepared for this situation. Shao Miling glanced at Ms. Zhang as she led Taotao to the wing room wearing a smile. Al left my sewing needles and thread inside the room. Can you help me find them? Taotao gave her a complex look, a mixture of emotions swirling within her. Deep down, she wished that Shao Miling would feel remorse at this final moment. Shao Miling sensed the intensity of Taotao's gaze, feeling a discomforting sensation. However, she quickly dismissed the feeling. Taotao's palms grew clammy with sweat. Once inside the wing room, Shao Miling pretended to search for something and asked Taotao for assistance. Soon Ms.Zhang called Shao Miling out of the room, and Shao Miling instructed Taotao to continue searching while she stepped away momentarily. The two women exchanged a conniving grin before parting ways. Shao Miling made her way back to the room, pretending to be oblivious to everything that was about to unfold. Meanwhile, Ms. Zhang went to relay the message to Ms.Mi. Once Ms.Mi received the message, she would know that everything had been set in motion. Inside the wing room, Yu Xiaomiao's task was to embrace Taotao, unaware that she was not Shao Miling. He wouldn't be held accountable for his actions. Ms.Mi's face lit up with a bright smile upon seeing Ms. Zhang. She turned to Shao Sanlang and said, Sanlang, could you please check on Xiaomiao? I'm feeling a little concerned. Qi had already gone after the food was finished. The first section of the family needed to witness this firsthand. As soon as Shao Sanlang raised his voice, they would all rush in that direction. Shao Sanlang agreed, setting his chopsticks down and leaving the table. Soon a scream echoed through the air. What's happening here? What's going on? What happened to Sanlang? Let's all go and see. Nio hurriedly dashed out of the hall. Miss Qiao, Xiao Yunduan, and Miss Fang, who were privy to the plan, could only shake their heads in disbelief. Nio was certainly driven by her own motivation. Miss Fang sneered. Let's all go and have a look. Chapter 861. Not Taotao uttered by Bexenville. CM Ms.Mi, filled with confidence, continued to shout before entering the room, "Oh, Taotao! What are you doing here? Oh my god, what is happening? What should we do?" Second uncle followed suit. "What? Taotao? Why is Taotao in Xiaomao's room?" Ms.Mi exclaimed, "Nobody knows what's going on." "Oh my god!" Miss Fang, aware of the truth, sneered at Ms.Mi, her eyes burning with anger, wishing she could slap her across the face. Qiao Xian struggled to contain her laughter, barely holding it in. Shao Yunduan stood calmly by her side, enjoying the spectacle. Eldest uncle was on the verge of fainting. "What? Taotao?" He rushed forward and opened his eyes, only to be taken aback. "Wait a minute." The girl sitting on the floor in the intoxicated Yu Xiaomao's arms was not Taotao at all. It was Miling. But hearing his brother and sister-in-law's persistent calls, eldest uncle began to doubt himself. He rubbed his eyes and looked closely. He wasn't mistaken. He could unmistakably recognize his own daughter. "What? Brother and sister-in-law, are you sure? This is Miling." Ms. Fang burst into laughter and turned to Ms.Mi, saying, "Honestly, second sister-in-law," instead of just shouting, "Open your eyes and see who is in your son-in-law's arms." "It's Miling. Why do you keep shouting Taotao? What's the meaning of this?" Ms. Fang raised her eyebrows and spoke furiously, "Why did you involve Taotao in this? Are you trying to ruin Taotao's reputation?" Ms.Mi and second uncle were taken aback, their faces filled with shock. They looked in the direction pointed out and stood there, dumbfounded. "That's Miling. Why Miling? What is happening?" Ms.Mi, pulling Yu Xiaomiao away, snapped at Ms. Zhang and Ms. Yan. "Why are you just standing there? Help her up. What is happening? It's your fault." Ms. Fang sneered and spoke fiercely, "Why did you think it was Taotao?" Ms.Mi and second uncle were bewildered. Ms.Mi stammered, "I was mistaken." "How coincidental," Shao Yunduan calmly remarked. "Both of you were mistaken?" Second uncle forced a smile. "I heard your second aunt-in-law shouting Taotao, so I thought, oh really? So you actually believed it was Taotao?" Ms. Fang sneered. Second uncle was taken aback. "That can't be true." Ms. Fang said proudly, "It seems that Miling truly loves her suitor. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to see her fiancé in person. But why did she faint? It seems like a destined marriage." Ms.Mi felt as if she were about to collapse. She glared at Ms. Fang but couldn't do anything about it. She had to endure all the humiliation coming from Ms. Fang. Ms. Fang gave her a disdainful look, snorted with irony and said, "I'm sure you have a lot to deal with right now, so we'll leave you to it. Goodbye. Let's go, old man." Ms. Fang pulled elder uncle out of the room. As they left, elder uncle was about to say something. He also sensed that something was amiss here, but he couldn't bring himself to ask what it was. Chapter 862, Problem Utted by Bexenville. CM Miss Fang and elder uncle departed, followed by Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan, who exchanged a knowing glance before leaving as well. Once they were gone, Ms.Mi snapped at Ms. Yan, "Go and join the first section of the family. Erlang and Silang, both of you leave us." Ms. Yan was taken aback by her mother-in-law's anger but understood that it was best to comply. She nodded and left the room. "Mom?" Shao Erlang and Shao Silang hesitated, reluctant to leave. They were displeased with Yu Xiaomao's behavior and were curious about why Miling was present and had fainted. It all seemed highly peculiar and they wanted answers. However, second uncle grew impatient. "Just get out of here. Stop murmuring." The two brothers were startled but decided it was best to leave. They remained silent and exited the room, knowing that their parents would uncover the truth eventually. Their presence would be of little use at the moment. Once the unrelated individuals had departed, Ms.Mi and second uncle turned to Yu Xiaomiao, their faces filled with anger. "What are you doing here? What happened? What did you just do? Why is Miling here? Where is Taotao?" "She was supposed to be here," Ms.Mi exclaimed, frustration evident in her voice. Yu Xiaomiao had sobered up and spoke in a more composed manner. "How was I supposed to know? You instructed me to pretend to be drunk and you would take care of the rest. You assured me that Taotao would be brought here so that one would be found in the same room with her, forcing her into marriage with me. But instead it was Miling who ended up here. I'm just as confused as you are." "Stop arguing," second uncle interjected, raising his voice. "You were only pretending to be drunk. Miling couldn't have arrived here on her own." "That's right, you were just pretending," Ms.Mi added. Yu Xiaomiao shouted in frustration, "No, I wasn't." I may not have been truly drunk, but my head was spinning. Someone opened the door and I didn't open my eyes immediately. When I finally did, I saw Mi on the floor. It startled me, so I got off the bed to check on her. Then Shao Sanlang arrived, followed by all of you. The room was filled with tension as they tried to make sense of the situation and understand how Mi had ended up in that room instead of Taotao. Second uncle and Ms.Mi were filled with a mixture of anger and regret, unable to find the right words to express their emotions. Realizing that Mi was awake, Yu Xiaomiao sneered inwardly but decided to suggest, "Perhaps we can ask Mi herself what happened." Shao Mi was lying in the bed where Yu Xiaomiao had been pretending to sleep. Given their engagement, it was not inappropriate for them to be in the same room. Ms.Mi glared at Yu Xiaomiao and shook Shao Mi to wake her up. Shao Mi slowly opened her eyes, looking confused. "What happened to me? Where am I? Mom, where is Taotao? What happened to her? I bet she's crying, isn't she?" Ah. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of anxiety and cunningness. Chapter 863, Revenge Uttered by Grownup. Calm. Ms.Mi struggled to find the right words to respond to Shao Mi's questions. Yu Xiaomiao cleared his throat, trying to regain some control of the situation. Shao Mi shouted at him, "Mom, why is he here? Where is Shao Taotao?" Having recognized Yu Xiaomiao, Shao Mi's eyes widened in shock. She turned to second uncle and demanded, "Did you bring Taotao here? Why was I in Yu Xiaomiao's arms when you entered?" Second uncle clenched his teeth, his eyes filled with anger. "Why are you shouting? Explain why you were with Yu Xiaomiao when we arrived." "That's impossible." Shao Mi stared at Yu Xiaomiao. "Elle did bring Taotao here, Elle." Her voice gradually trailed off and panic set in. She tightly gripped Ms.Mi's sleeves. "Elle intended to return to the kitchen, but someone struck me on the head. Yes. I was knocked unconscious. And now I'm here. Mom, what's happening? Can you explain?" "What? You were knocked unconscious? Who could have done it?" Second uncle and Ms.Mi exchanged panicked glances, their shock evident. The three of them engaged in a lengthy discussion, attempting to piece together the sequence of events. However, the most perplexing question remained: who had knocked out Shao Mi and brought her to this room? It must have been someone from the first section of the family. No one else would do such a thing to us. How terrible, how dreadful. "Dad, Mom, I refuse to marry into the Yu family. I don't want to. It was supposed to be Taotao, not me." "Enough. Shut up. We can't let this go. We must confront the first section of the family and demand answers." Suddenly, the door was forcefully kicked open and Miss Fang barged in, heading straight for Ms.Mi. Before Ms.Mi could react, Miss Fang grabbed her hair and pulled it violently. Miss Fang screamed as she struck Ms.Mi. "You wicked woman! How dare you try to frame Taotao? How dare you? No wonder you suddenly changed your mind about breaking off the engagement. You wanted my Taotao to your daughter's place. You wicked witch." Miss Fang continued to scream in anger, delivering blow after blow to Ms.Mi, who cried out in pain. Shao Mi stood frozen, trembling in fear. She was too terrified to even cry. "Stop it, elder sister-in-law. Stop." Second uncle pleaded desperately, wanting to intervene but hesitating. He had lost much of his confidence after everything was exposed. "Elder brother, tell elder sister-in-law to stop," he urged, looking at elder uncle. Elder uncle appeared to be lost, as if his spirit had been crushed. Second uncle continued to implore him. Eldest uncle observed the scene but remained silent, struggling to find his own words. Eldest uncle realized that he couldn't order Miss Fang to stop her actions. Miss Fang didn't actually remove them from the vicinity but concealed them nearby. He felt irritated by the idea of eavesdropping, but Miss Fang insisted that he should witness the unfolding events, which left him perplexed. Then she instructed him to listen, questioning his integrity. Why would he eavesdrop on his brother and Yu Xiaomiao discussing what had transpired? But Miss Fang compelled him to hear the truth. And that was exactly what he heard. After a while, Miss Fang released her grip on Ms.Mi, having momentarily satisfied her anger. Chapter 864, Eavesdropping Uttered by Grownup. Seeing Miss Fang pointed directly at them, her eyes filled with anger as she unleashed her curse. "From this moment on, we have nothing to do with you anymore. I'm far from finished with this. I will rally the entire clan to seek justice for what you've done. You are truly despicable, and mark my words, your actions will only worsen. Both Ms.Mi and second uncle's faces underwent a sudden change, visibly taken aback. Ms.Mi's face swelled up, displaying numerous blood traces and broken lips. She grimaced in pain but managed to speak through gritted teeth. Didn't you leave? How dare you eavesdrop on our conversation? Regret washed over Ms.Mi and second uncle at this critical juncture. However, despite the accident, they were desperate for an explanation. That was why they had wanted to interrogate Yuezheng. Little did they expect that Miss Fang and eldest uncle would still be present. Miss Fang sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. So what? I now have proof that will expose your secrets. Yet, there was no need for them to remain any longer. Let's go, old man. Miss Fang exclaimed, urging eldest uncle to leave. Second uncle pleaded, his voice tinged with remorse. Elder brother, elder sister-in-law, we deeply regret our actions. We were misguided, but it was all for the sake of our child. Miss Fang retorted, her words laced with venom. You framed our child to protect yours. How utterly repulsive. Caught off guard, second uncle stuttered, his voice lacking confidence. We are sorry. But Taotao is still all right, isn't she? Elder brother, elder sister-in-law, please let it go. We're family. Miss Fang's gaze intensified as she glared at second uncle, her wish to strike him becoming almost tangible. Where was this notion of family when you plotted against Taotao? She spat back, her words filled with seething anger. That's only because we are capable of taking care of her. It doesn't make you good people. Ms.Mi muttered, her words filled with resentment. You knocked out Miling, didn't you? Which one of you did it? Qi? She questioned, her voice accusingly pointed at them. Qi, along with Ms. Su Yang Xiaoni and Qiao Xian, had already left after finishing their meal. It seemed likely that Qi was the one who had incapacitated Shao Miling. Being a boy, he possessed the strength to do so. So what? Miss Fang cursed vehemently, her anger evident. You set us up and we played our part. You? Ms.Mi exclaimed. Shut up. From this moment on, we are cutting off all ties with you. Old man, come, let's go talk to the land officer and resolve this matter within the clan. Miss Fang declared firmly, ready to depart. Ms.Mi trembled with anger, but her fear quickly overtook her. Hurriedly, she moved to stop Miss Fang, and second uncle joined her in their attempt. No, you can't go. Ms.Mi pleaded desperately. Elder sister-in-law, why be so cruel? Elder brother, say something. Second uncle implored. Save your breath, Miss Fang sneered, her voice filled with derision. You won't be able to stop me, so give it a try. And don't even think you can confine me here. Elder brother, we're truly sorry. After all, we are family, aren't we? It would be an enormous scandal, wouldn't it? It would tarnish Taotao's reputation as well. Fang's response was swift and sharp. Taotao has had nothing to do with this from the very beginning. She has her brother to care for her. Ms.Mi and second uncle continued to implore, their pleas filled with desperation. Eldest uncle sighed heavily, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. The conversation he overheard outside had shocked, saddened, and deeply disappointed him. His own brother and sister-in-law had orchestrated a scheme against his own daughter. They had plotted to break off the engagement and replace Taotao with their own child. How could they treat Taotao this way? They didn't regard him as an elder brother at all. However, despite his inner turmoil, Taotao had remained unharmed. And now, seeing the couple beg before him like this, he found himself unable to utter any words of reproach. Chapter 865, Second Sister-in-Law's Idea uttered by Bexenville. If news of this situation were to spread, their own family would become a laughingstock, which was far from desirable. Eldest uncle turned towards Miss Fang, his voice barely audible as he suggested, what if we persuade the two couples to admit their mistakes and make a promise? Let's just let it go. Our family's reputation will suffer as well. Ms.Mi and second uncle expressed their agreement with cheers and nods. However, Miss Fang, who had managed to calm herself after venting her anger on Ms.Mi, was once again provoked by eldest uncle's words. She shouted angrily, no way. You foolish old man, your mind is so muddled. If it weren't for Taotao's luck, we would be the ones suffering here. Your brother and sister-in-law are nothing but trash. They were trying to ruin Taotao's life. And you old fool, agree just because of a few tears and insincere words. What do you truly think of Taotao in your heart? Is she your daughter? Let me tell you, I will never agree to this solution. And ask our sons, do you think they would agree? Taotao has done nothing wrong and neither have we. What does a mere name matter? There's no way we will ever agree to it. Miss Fang had no intention of making peace, and she even berated eldest uncle, leaving him dumbfounded. Second uncle and Ms.Mi were equally stunned. As Miss Fang rushed out, the two of them stood frozen, not daring to stop her in any way. Shao Miling suddenly jolted awake. If this matter were to be brought before the clan, the first section of the family would undoubtedly side with their own family, causing them to lose everything. She shouted, desperation evident in her voice. It was second sister-in-law's idea, it was all her doing. It has nothing to do with my parents. Elder aunt, if you want to blame someone, blame second sister-in-law. It was her idea. Everyone was taken aback, their expressions filled with shock. Second uncle and Ms.Mi shared in the same astonishment. Miss Fang also came to a halt, turning to face Shao Miling with a cold gaze. Shao Miling recoiled, her voice trembling as she confessed, I never intended to break off the engagement, but one day second sister-in-law approached me. In that moment, Shao Miling forgot about the promise she had made to Ms.Zhang. She didn't even recall the agreement they had reached. Being a selfish woman who harbored dislike for Ms.Zhang, Shao Miling felt no remorse for betraying her. Thus, she divulged every detail without hesitation. Everyone present. Ms.Mi nearly screamed in fury, that wretched woman. I knew it. She always wears a sinister expression and is full of wicked tricks. I want to beat her to death. Miss Fang sneered, her tone dripping with disdain. Miss. Zhang may have planted the seed, but you willingly accepted her idea, didn't you? If you hadn't even entertained the thought, Ms. Zhang's suggestion would have had no effect on you. Shao Miling covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. I just wanted to marry someone better. Miss Fang's voice turned icy as she responded, your mother had found you a suitable match. You aren't deserving of anyone better. Let me make it clear, if you ever try to benefit from Yunduan's troubles, I will tear you apart. Shao Miling trembled in fear, not daring to utter a single word. It wouldn't be long before Ms. Zhang arrived, escorted by others. Yu Xiaomiao felt a sense of speechlessness in the midst of it all. There was no need for him to play along anymore. With a polite wave he bid them farewell and left. Chapter 866. Ms. Zhang's Embarrassment uttered by Bexenville. Ms.Mi and second uncle felt a deep sense of embarrassment. They had allowed their prospective son-in-law to witness this chaotic situation, and it exposed their lack of self-esteem. They couldn't find any words to undo what had already transpired. Second uncle composed himself, mustered a few kind words, and escorted Yu Xiaomiao out. Soon, members from both the first and second sections of the family gathered in the hall. Ms.Mi directed her anger towards Ms. Zhang, using her as an outlet for her frustration. She raised her hand and delivered a harsh slap across Ms. Zhang's face, causing her to stagger and fall. You wretched woman. I never should have kept you around. How despicable you are. Tears streamed down Ms. Zhang's face as she covered her injured cheek. Shao Erlang was taken aback by the scene and rushed forward to help Ms. Zhang, but he was abruptly stopped by Ms. Nio's stern command. Stop. Don't touch her. Mom? What did she do? What are you doing? And what about you? Shao Erlang questioned, bewildered by the situation. Ms. Nio felt pain coursing through her body both physically and emotionally. It was only because of Ms. Zhang's actions that she found herself in this situation. Ask her yourself. You wicked woman. You're a troublemaker. Shao Erlang was still grappling with confusion. Mom, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding? Miss Fang let out a disdainful snort before slowly recounting the entire story. Only Xiao Yunduan, Qiao Xian, Qi and Taotao were aware of it prior to this revelation. The rest of the family members were shocked by the revelation. They all cast scornful glances at Ms. Zhang. If the story was true, Ms. Zhang's actions were incredibly malicious. Ms. Yen felt a chill run down her spine. If Ms. Zhang were to remain in the family, she would insist on living separately no matter what. She refused to share a roof with such a woman, for fear that she might be harmed in her sleep. Shao Erlang was taken aback, his eyes widening as if he had been struck by a heavy blow. Turning pale, he staggered backward a few steps. No, Erlang, no. You have to believe me. I never said those things. I never instigated Miling. She's lying. Ms. Zhang cursed inwardly at Shao Meiling, Ms.Mi, and second uncle. They were all utterly useless. They had failed at such a simple task. If only they had been a little more competent and successful, it would have been the first section of the family who would be in tears right now, not her. Ms. Zhang refused to admit that she was the mastermind behind the idea. Through tears she pleaded, "I've returned, but none of you like me. You all despise me. I can't defend myself, but why do you continue to heap accusations upon me? I don't have the courage to say such things. Furthermore, if you force me to shoulder the blame, I would never be able to shake it off. Erlang, you have to believe me. What are you saying? You taught me everything." Shao Meiling was consumed with rage, lunging towards Ms. Zhang, attempting to strike her. Shao Erlang intervened, stopping Shao Meiling. "Meiling, calm down. No violence." "Second brother." Shao Meiling angrily pushed his hand away, snapping back. "She did it. She taught me everything. If it weren't for her, I would never have conceived of such an idea. But she refuses to confess. And now she's making me take the blame. Step aside, I'm going to kill her." Ms. Zhang sobbed, her voice filled with sorrow. Shao Erlang found himself caught in the middle, his expression filled with bitterness. Yet he still positioned himself between Shao Meiling and his wife. "Meiling, the second sister-in-law, did make a mistake in the past, but you can't solely hold her accountable. You need evidence." Chapter 867. A Potential Harm Uttered by Bexenville. I'm so furious. Shao Meiling seethed with anger. "She told me when there were only two of us. I can't find any evidence. This person must have done this on purpose. That's why she is denying it now. What are you putting on that sad look for? You are the most vicious one." Shao Meiling exclaimed, her anger apparent. Shao Meiling looked infuriated and attempted to throw a punch at Ms. Zhang but was restrained by Shao Erlang. She cursed and struggled against his grip. Yang Xiaoni whispered to Qiao Xian, "What are they doing here?" "I'm confused. Fifth sister-in-law, who do you think is lying?" Qiao Xian smiled and shook her head. "I'm not sure. There is no evidence." "But what's your opinion?" "I'd rather not speculate." Yang Xiaoni chuckled and agreed. "True." However, deep down, Qiao Xian believed that Shao Meiling was telling the truth. Ms. Zhang had a shady character, and Shao Meiling hadn't considered this aspect of their marriage, but Ms. Zhang might have. Zhang held a grudge against both the second and first sections of the family. If her plan had succeeded, the first section of the family would have become the victims and would have started hating the second section of the family, which was exactly what she desired. This woman posed a potential threat to everyone. Ms.Mi shouted, "Stop it, you two. Son, Meiling doesn't lie. This person is not a good woman. Are you seriously going to believe a lying, vicious person who nearly got your son killed over your own sister? Are you out of your mind?" Ms.Mi had barely finished speaking when Ms. Zhang broke down in tears. "I knew it. You'll never forgive me for what I did." Ms.Mi spat, her annoyance evident as she exclaimed, "No one will ever forgive you for this. I never begged you to come back. It was you who shamelessly showed up at our doorstep. You were divorced. How dare you return and put on such a pitiful act? I shouldn't have agreed. You wretched woman. No wonder Meiling confronted you as soon as you came home. Admit it, you bitch. I didn't do it. You're all mistaken. It was you. You did it." Experiencing a headache, Miss Fang snapped, "That's your own family matter and you can discuss it later. I need one resolution on this. The clan needs to be informed." Xiao Yunduan agreed, "Anything Mom says." Xiao Sanlang angrily chimed in, "Exactly. We can't just let it go like this. Taotao is a kind girl who was almost harmed because of you." Eldest uncle fell silent as he tried to speak. He did have a few things to say, but he knew that none of his words would make a difference. He suddenly felt a pang of sadness. None of his sons understood him at all. Miss Fang stood up and declared, "Let's go and find the land officer." No, elder sister-in-law, it's all Ms. Zhang's fault. She's a troublemaker. Well, kick her out of the family. Will that satisfy you? It's your decision, not mine. Most people in your family are irritating." Miss Fang responded. Instead of engaging in further conversation with her, and under the protection of Xiao Yunduan, Qiao Xian and other family members, Miss Fang hurriedly made her way to the land officer's house, paying no heed to eldest uncle's persistent attempts to stop her. Chapter 868. Not family anymore. Uttered by Bexenville. Ms. Fong was adamant about obtaining a satisfactory resolution. Ms. Nio and second uncle were shocked and couldn't let the first section of the family handle the situation alone. They brought along Shao Miling and had Ms.Zhang escorted while they ascended together with Shao Erlang. When the land officer and the elderly men from the clan gathered and heard the story, they were all taken aback and began lecturing the second section of the family. Naturally, they defended the first section of the family more, as their actions had been quite vicious and self-centered, impossible to ignore. Ms. Nio and second uncle felt deeply embarrassed by the situation. They could have argued if it were something else, but Ms. Fong and eldest uncle had overheard the conversation with Yu Xiaomiao as a witness. It was solid evidence. Ms. Nio pushed Ms. Zhang to the ground, labeling her as the culprit. She trusted her own daughter, and at this point, Ms. Zhang had to shoulder the blame regardless of the circumstances. Considering Ms. Zhang had done something similar in the past, almost everyone present believed Shao Miling and Ms. Nio. Ms. Nio continued to shout that they would divorce Ms. Zhang once again. She made a fierce vow, stating that they wouldn't have treated the first section of the family in such a manner if it hadn't been for Ms. Zhang's plan. None of this would have happened without her as the culprit. Thus, they sincerely hoped that the first section of the family would forgive them. Zhang continued to cry incessantly. As someone who had done something similar before, and with her mother-in-law and sister-in-law accusing her directly, she had no argument to counter. However, they were still a family, and Ms. Nio's decision had nothing to do with the land officer and the elderly men from the clan. But the second section of the family had almost caused harm to the first section of the family. Thankfully, Taotao was unharmed. The others offered a few consoling words, and while the two sections of the family wouldn't completely sever their relationship, a lingering grudge remained between them. From that moment onward, the first section of the family would no longer consider the second section as part of their family, treating them instead as an ordinary family from the same clan. Second uncle and Ms. Nio pleaded for forgiveness. No. We are a family bound by blood. We're not just an ordinary family from the clan. Elder brother, please say something. You want to prove of this, right? You promised our parents that you would take care of us. Why are you begging him? He's the most vicious and cruel man. If you hadn't refused to help us break off the engagement, we wouldn't have resorted to this. You're heartless. Eldest uncle let out a heavy sigh, and Ms. Fong, Shao Yunduan, Shao Sanlang, and even Shao Dalong looked at him expressionlessly. Tears welling up in her eyes, Taotao spoke. What do you have to say, Dad? In your eyes, you prioritize second uncle and third uncle's families, and their children are treated so well. You protect and assist them all the time, but what about me? Why am I not your niece but just your daughter? Eldest uncle turned pale and stumbled back. What are you saying? Ms. Fong grabbed hold of Taotao as she coldly addressed eldest uncle. You are my beloved daughter and I love you. Your brothers and sisters-in-law all love and protect you. We will never forgive anyone who tries to bully you. Qiao Xian could no longer tolerate the situation. She calmly stated, the second section of the family attempted to harm Taotao today, and if we don't delve deeper into this, they may try to harm someone else tomorrow. If I can't obtain a satisfactory answer from the resolution, I will have to take matters into my own hands to vent my anger. I love Taotao and I will never allow her to suffer. Ms. Nio screamed, what do you mean? Chapter 869. Paying back. Uttered by Bexenville. Xiao Xian's smile was fleeting. We will repay you in the same way you hurt us. Nio was taken aback. What do you mean? Qiao Xian continued, we will employ the same methods you used against us. Ms. Nio, second uncle and Shao Erlang all turned pale. That won't work. It's impossible. Ms. Fong sneered. You can frame us but we can't do the same to you? That doesn't sound fair. Second uncle and Ms. Nio were left dumbfounded. Indeed, they could frame the first section of the family because they believed eldest uncle would always defend them, giving them the freedom to do as they pleased. Their best course of action now was to offer an apology. However, what if the first section of the family didn't like them and wanted to frame them in return? They would be incapable of defending themselves. They had never considered this before. It had never occurred to them that while they devised various schemes to torment the first section of the family, the same tactics could be used against them. Second uncle and Ms. Nio couldn't help but tremble. Qiao Xian stopped looking at them. Eldest uncle felt a profound sense of despair but dared not utter a word. He had no control over Qiao Xian, Xiao Yunduan, Ms. Fang, or anyone else in his family. One wrong word and his brother's family would face even harsher consequences. Inwardly he sighed, what had caused all of this? This incident would be accurately recorded in the clan's records. The land officer had tried to conceal the entire affair to prevent their reputations from being tarnished. But Xiao Yunduan rejected the proposal. He urged the land officer to make the truth public. He wanted everyone to clearly understand the true relationship between the first and second sections of the family, ensuring that the latter wouldn't carry out any unpleasant acts under the guise of the former. Second uncle and Ms.Mi were furious but lacked the courage to say anything after hearing Qiao Xian's threat. News of the incident quickly spread, shocking the entire village. Many people criticized Ms.Mi for her foolishness. What was she thinking? It was fortunate that Taotao was unharmed. If something had happened to her, there would be no evidence to prove that Ms.Mi was responsible. However, the first section of the family would never forgive them either. To make matters even more absurd, they even attempted to find a better suitor for Xiao Mailing through Xiao Yunduan. It was utterly ridiculous. Upon returning home, Ms.Mi was consumed by anger. She slapped and kicked Ms.Zhang, shouting at Xiao Erlang and demanding that he divorce her once again. Ms.Zhang crumpled to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably with her head lowered. Xiao Erlang found himself torn. He knelt down and pleaded with his mother to forgive Ms.Zhang. There was no proof implicating her, and her tears genuinely made him feel sorry for her. She was his wife, and he didn't want her to suffer from a false accusation. He wouldn't agree to divorce his wife based solely on the words of others. Ms.Mi was filled with frustration, her heart aching. She cursed Xiao Erlang for being ungrateful and cruel. However, Ms.Zhang chose to stay despite everything that had transpired. Ms.Mi and second uncle became increasingly concerned about Xiao Mailing's marriage. Since Xiao Mailing and Yu Xiaomiao had been alone in a room together, they were compelled to get married. Now they were apprehensive that the Yu family might cancel the engagement. After discussing the situation, the couple gathered their courage and sought support from the first section of the family. They approached Xiao Yunduan, hoping he could assist and stand up for Xiao Mailing. Chapter 870, Auntie Nyo and Uncle Shao utted by Bexenville. Sim, elder brother, elder sister-in-law, don't you care about Xiao Mailing? She is your niece, and you can't simply allow her to be bullied after her marriage, can you? Please, elder brother and elder sister-in-law, pleaded the couple, finding a suitable moment to ask for the favor when eldest uncle was at home after dinner. Before eldest uncle could respond, Qiao Xian cleared her throat and spoke with a smile. Auntie Nyo, Uncle Shao, Taotao is also your niece. But I'm not sure if you would ever allow her to be bullied, considering what you've done. Yang Xiaoni and Ms. Su struggled to hold back their laughter. Ms. Fang snapped and glared at the couple, saying, Xiao Mailing is not innocent. Don't lie to me. I heard her laughing at Taotao when she thought her plan had succeeded. How dare you ask Yunduan to support her? Get lost. However, Ms. Nyo and second uncle seemed oblivious to Ms. Fang's words. They were stunned by Qiao Xian's way of addressing them. What are you calling us? They asked in disbelief. Qiao Xian responded, Auntie Nyo and Uncle Shao, is there something wrong with that? Second uncle became so furious that he nearly fainted. Elder brother. Ms. Fang chimed in, hey, there's no elder brother here. You have no manners. Just leave. Eldest uncle could no longer tolerate the situation. Ms. Fang, that's enough. Ms. Fang snorted. I want to emphasize that these two people have no relation to us. Why should I be the one in the wrong? Ms. Nyo and second uncle were both filled with anger and anxiety. It suddenly dawned on them that their connection with the first section of the family had been severed. And at this moment, the reality sank in for Ms. Nyo and second uncle. It wasn't a dream but a harsh reality they had to face. Qiao Xian's way of addressing them had struck a nerve, making them realize the severance of their ties with the first section of the family. Xiao Yunduan intervened, reminding eldest uncle that the land officer and the clan had already made the announcement, leaving no room for argument. Eldest uncle pleaded, can't you help your fellow clan members? Xiao Yunduan replied firmly, but I don't want to. Eldest uncle. Ms. Fang sneered, did you hear that? My son loves his sister and you're trying to force him? If you want to back them up, go ahead. But I will expose the true relationship between Ms. Nyo and Xiao Delu with us. So, you'll be standing alone, not on our behalf. Eldest uncle muttered, you. Ms. Fang interrupted, feel free to try. Niu and second uncle were still in a daze as they were driven out of the Shao family's gate. As they looked at the towering house and the closed gate, they felt an emptiness in their hearts. Something was missing, something that could never be regained. They could sense each other's anxiety and worries. The realization hit them hard. There was no one to clean up their mess for them. The first section of the family, they've truly severed ties. Ms. Niu seethed with anger and placed the blame on Ms.Zhang. It's all because of that troublemaker Ms.Zhang? With a heavy heart, the couple reached out to Yu Xiaomiao, unsure of how the Yu family would react. To their surprise, the Yu family acted as if nothing had occurred and agreed to proceed with the marriage. They came to an agreement on the wedding date, which would be the 6th day of March the following year. The couple breathed a sigh of relief. Without the support of the first section of the family, they couldn't afford to say anything negative about the Yu family. Furthermore, Mrs. Yu had expressed regret over the initially rejected engagement, but Mr. Yu and Yu Xiaomiao decided to uphold the marriage arrangement. They were still blood-related, which would always be beneficial for them. Chapter 871. Buying Happiness Uttered by Bexenville. Shao Miling seemed to be better off compared to the other girls, so why would they reject the marriage proposal? Despite her unpleasant personality, if she behaved well after getting married, everything would be fine. If she dared to act out, she would be dealt with accordingly. Ms. Yan wasn't pleased with Ms. Zhang's presence. She believed Shao Miling's claim that if her sister-in-law truly wanted to break off the engagement, she would have done so before Ms. Zhang returned. Clearly something had transpired between them. To avoid Ms. Zhang, Ms. Yan decided to live separately from the rest of the family after the New Year and the Lantern Festival. Although the relationship between the two families had undergone a significant change, Ms. Yan continued to visit the first section of the family daily, and they treated her with equal respect. Qiao Xian and Ms. Fang suspected that Ms. Zhang was responsible for the situation. It was not surprising that she harbored resentment and might try to manipulate the first section of the family. Qiao Xian even cautioned Ms. Yan to be vigilant and avoid being framed by Ms. Zhang, as she appeared to be quite unstable. Ms. Yan was grateful for Qiao Xian's warning and sighed with a bitter smile, contemplating the possibility of living separately. Qiao Xian glanced at her with surprise and couldn't help but admire her resilience. Ms. Yan shook her head and chuckled. It could be very difficult. You know what your in-laws are like. They suspect Nis. Zhang and they won't agree with your proposal. Initially, Ms. Yan had been filled with anger and tried to convince herself that it was necessary. However, at this point she was no longer so sure. She understood how challenging it was to deal with her in-laws. If they disapproved of the proposal, there would be little she could do about it. Fifth sister-in-law, do you have any other suggestions? Please help me. She pleaded. Qiao Xian pondered for a moment and replied, don't handle it yourself. Ask your parents to intervene, using both firmness and persuasion. Perhaps offering them some benefits could increase the chances of success. Ms. Niu and second uncle were afraid of confrontational individuals but were inclined to take advantage of the more accommodating ones. If the Yan family exerted pressure and provided some incentives, Ms. Niu and second uncle might agree to the arrangement, especially considering that Shao Xiling was their son and could support them despite the separation. However, the outcome would depend on what Ms. Yan was willing to offer in return. Yan thought for a while and quickly made a firm decision without any hesitation. She expressed her gratitude to Qiao Xian with a smile. Offering 10 or 20 liang, along with generous ongoing support fees, would be worthwhile. It was a price she was willing to pay for some peace. She had a substantial amount of money now, although she wasn't particularly eager to part with such a large sum. However, it wouldn't hurt her too much financially. With a weight lifted off her mind, Ms. Yan returned home feeling content. However, she was met with a dark stare from Ms. Zhang once again. A chill ran down Ms. Yan's spine. She quickly glanced at Ms. Zhang and instinctively moved away, trying to avoid her. Zhang sneered, causing Ms. Yan to feel even more unsettled. Her heart raced and she almost lost her balance. This woman was truly deranged. She was terrifying. Driven by Ms. Niu, Ms. Zhang had reached the brink of mental instability. After Shao Miling's marriage was finally settled, Ms. Niu had no other matters to attend to. Thus, she turned her attention towards Ms. Zhang. Her gaze was filled with malice, making her intentions clear. Chapter 872. Ms. Zhang's Blame Uttered by Bexenville. CM Translator, Henyi Translations NIS. Niu firmly believed that Ms. Zhang was responsible for all the troubles their family had endured, and she had no intention of giving her an easy time considering their past conflicts. Ms. Zhang was constantly tormented by Ms. Niu, and this constant torment had further deteriorated her original personality, making her even more sinister. She harbored a deep hatred for them, especially Ms. Niu. However, she didn't dare retaliate against Ms. Niu, as she was her mother-in-law and a senior figure in the family. She knew that if she did anything to Ms. Niu, her own suffering would only worsen, especially since she was already in a difficult situation without provoking Ms. Niu. A mother-in-law needed no excuse to berate her daughter-in-law. In this house, excuses were unnecessary. Frustrated and irritated, Ms. Zhang started to vent her anger on Ms. Yan. As they were walking together with their sons, Ms. Zhang suddenly pushed her own son, causing him to fall to the ground and burst into tears. Ms. Zhang screamed, "Fourth sister-in-law, how could you harm and push Xianwen like that? You're so vicious. I know you hate me, but you can't blame this on Xianwen. He's innocent." Ms. Yan was taken aback by Ms. Zhang's sudden outburst and her deteriorating mental state. Anger coursed through her, causing her to tremble. "Second sister-in-law, show me your evidence. I didn't lay a hand on Xianwen." "Of course you did. You're too afraid to admit it. If you hate me, blame it on me, not on a child." "Oh, my life is so bitter, my poor little boy." "You're insane. You're lying. You're just too cowardly to admit it. What's all this shouting about?" Ms. Niu emerged from the house, her impatience evident in her tone as she interrupted the argument. "Ms. Zhang, what do you think you're doing? If you can't stay here quietly, then pack your bags and go back to your village." Ms. Zhang, with tears streaming down her face, held a deep grudge as she replied, "It was the fourth sister-in-law who hit and pushed Xianwen. You're not blaming her, you're blaming me." "Elle didn't do any of that," Ms. Yan exclaimed, denying the accusation. Shao Xianwen continued crying inconsolably. "Oh, my poor little grandson." Ms. Niu felt sorry for Shao Xianwen. She gently lifted him up, comforting him, and then instructed Shao Miling to take the child back inside. Zhang sneered and cast a proud glance at Ms. Yan. However, in the next moment, two loud slaps echoed through the air as Ms. Niu struck Ms. Zhang across the face. Pointing at her, Ms. Niu cursed, "You are forbidden from going near Xianwen. Are you trying to harm him again? You vicious woman." Clutching her stinging cheeks, Ms. Zhang burst into tears. "Elle didn't do it. It was the fourth sister-in-law." "Shut up. I don't believe a word you say. Ms. Yan has no reason to do such things, and you kidnapped your own child. You're capable of anything. Elle didn't, it was the fourth sister-in-law." Ms. Zhang received another slap across the face. "Just keep your mouth shut, you vile woman. You disgust me. If it weren't for troublemakers like you, our family wouldn't be in this mess. It's all your fault. You've already ruined Miling's marriage and now you're targeting Ms. Yan. You never give up, do you?" Ms. Zhang cried even harder. This only served to further infuriate Ms. Niu. She snapped, "You bringer of misfortune. Be silent now. Kneel down right here and reflect on your actions." Chapter 873, Giving Up Pretending Udat by Zenvel. Ms. Zhang cried uncontrollably, collapsing onto the ground, her body trembling with anguish. Why her mother-in-law had already made up her mind to support Ms. Yan without even considering her side of the story. She didn't believe a word Ms. Zhang said and continued to humiliate and torment her. Ms. Zhang felt herself spiraling into madness. Ms. Yan, who had been angry about the false accusations, unexpectedly felt a tinge of compassion towards Ms. Zhang. She could see that Ms. Zhang was truly suffering in this terrible situation. Zhang had never imagined that her mother-in-law would completely lose trust in her. It was fortunate in a way as she no longer had to struggle to defend herself. After cursing Ms. Zhang, Ms. Niu sneered and turned to Ms. Yan, speaking in a gentle tone, "It's getting cold outside. Let's go inside." Ms. Yan was taken aback but nodded in agreement. Ms. Zhang's heart ached as she witnessed this interaction. She struggled to rise to her feet and spoke angrily, "I'll know all of you hate me. But what have I done? If it weren't for your coldness and hostility, I could have lived a peaceful life and cherished my own children." Ms. Niu turned back, her eyes filled with fury, and ordered Ms. Zhang to kneel down. "Your time is not up yet," she spat. Any remaining compassion Ms. Yan had for Ms. Zhang vanished as she replied, "Second sister-in-law, no one owes you anything. You asked for money, but did you ever plan to repay it? You know very well that people are not obliged to fulfill your every request. Ms.Mi sneered in response. Repaying money? Her worthless brother has nothing to repay. Zhang shot a fierce glare at Ms.Mi. This only further infuriated Ms.Mi. What are you staring at? Am one not allowed to complain about your worthless brother? Ms.Zhang, filled with anger and frustration, retorted defiantly, I'm not leaving. You can beat me to death if you want. I'd like to see how capable you are. If you kill me, you'll have to pay with a life. I'm not afraid of you. You can do whatever you want to me, but I'm staying right here. Both Ms. Yen and Ms.Mi were taken aback by Ms. Zhang's outburst. Realizing that she had reached her limit, Ms. Zhang decided to give up pretending and confronted Ms.Mi directly. Ms.Mi, furious at Ms. Zhang's defiance, responded angrily, What are you saying, Ms. Zhang? Say it again. I'm not afraid of you. Drive me away if you want. You don't believe me, and Erlang won't believe you either. You vile bitch. They'll kill you. Ms.Mi, overcome with anger, rolled up her sleeves, ready to strike Ms. Zhang. Reacting instinctively, Ms. Zhang dodged the slap and pushed Ms.Mi away. You dare to challenge me? Ms.Mi, consumed by rage, lunged at Ms. Zhang, attempting to beat and scratch her. In the struggle, however, Ms.Mi slipped and fell hard to the ground. You wretched bitch. How dare you lay your hands on me? Second uncle, having just returned from outside, witnessed the altercation. He quickly approached and assisted Ms.Mi, exclaiming, What are you all staring at? Come and help. Ms. Yen, still in a state of disbelief, snapped back to reality. She hurriedly joined second uncle in assisting Ms.Mi to her feet. Meanwhile, Ms. Zhang remained where she was, displaying a seemingly emotionless expression. She had nothing to lose at that moment and was hesitant to intervene. Chapter 874. Embarrassed Udat by Zenvel. Sim, divorce her immediately. How dare she touch me? She's plotting to kidnap and kill me. Zhang, her lips bitten, responded weakly, I didn't push her. Enough, I saw everything. Second uncle sneered. Ms. Zhang, you truly have a wicked heart. Abandoning her pretenses, Ms. Zhang turned around and walked away. Ms.Mi and second uncle seethed with anger, feeling a deep sense of outrage. She just walks away like this? How dare she? Our son is foolish to show any kindness to this vile woman. When Shao Erlang returned in the evening, Ms.Mi and second uncle pressured him to divorce his wife. Ms.Mi pounded on her chest as if deeply wounded in her heart. Ms. Zhang, no longer pretending, cried uncontrollably, hoping to convince Shao Erlang of her innocence. That was all she wanted. She had given up pretending. But Shao Erlang, still enamored with her, hesitated to believe his parents' accusations without proof. His affection for her remained. Ms.Mi had never felt this level of fury before, especially when it was caused by someone as vile as Ms. Zhang. Overwhelmed by anger, she collapsed, leaving second uncle and Ms. Yen in shock. Furious, second uncle pushed Shao Erlang away, his voice filled with anger. You trust this woman over your own parents? Do you want her to harm your mother so you'll believe us? You're a terrible son. Shao Erlang was taken aback by his mother's collapse and felt overwhelmed with guilt. He cried uncontrollably, kneeling on the ground as he pleaded, I didn't mean to. I need proof. What proof do you need? Do you think your mother and I orchestrated this? You know very well what your mother is like. She may be nagging and stingy, but she would never falsely accuse someone of such things. Shao Erlang turned pale, burdened by guilt. Second uncle sneered, even Ms. Yen witnessed everything. Shao Erlang suddenly looked up at Ms. Yen. And so did Shao Xilang. Ms. Yen cursed inwardly at her father-in-law's stupidity. How did she get caught up in this conflict? What could she say? She couldn't tell the truth as her in-laws would never forgive her. But could she tell a lie? If she did and they believed her, they would drive Ms. Zhang away. However, Shao Xilang wouldn't blame his parents. He would blame her for ruining his marriage. Feeling trapped and conflicted, Ms. Yen sighed and looked down. Father, you're putting me in an incredibly difficult position. She realized that no matter what she said, it wouldn't be well received by her second brother. Ms. Zhang screamed, Fourth sister-in-law, why do you hate me and spread these rumors? Ms. Yen responded coldly, What did I say? I never touched Xianwen. You accused me of pushing him when you and I crossed paths. What more can I say? I can't simply claim that you're using your own son to frame me, can I? But because of Dad's words, I had no choice but to speak up. Yet, no matter what I say, you refuse to admit the truth. Chapter 875. Divorce again. Udat Bisenvel. Ms.Mi regained consciousness and glared at Ms.Zhang, her anger intensifying. Divorce her, now? Shao couldn't hold back his tears. His father was right. Although his mother was unreliable in many ways, she would never plot something like this. And his fourth sister-in-law didn't appear to be a liar either. Shao began to understand the truth unfolding before him. When his mother had fainted in anger, he had already sensed the reality of the situation. If his mother had orchestrated all of this, she wouldn't have collapsed like that. He just didn't want to believe it. But the truth could not be avoided. It would eventually reveal itself. Ms.Zhang, overwhelmed with despair, cried inconsolably. She realized that she was doomed. Her husband had lost faith in her and no longer wanted to defend her. What had gone wrong with her life? Suddenly, an angry resentment brewed within Ms.Zhang. She incessantly questioned why she was treated like a thief in her own home, never given a chance to atone for her mistakes. She vowed to never give them any peace in their lives. Ms.Zhang confessed to everything, the events of today, her involvement with Shao Miling. She even mocked them for their gullibility, claiming that she almost succeeded. What a shame, she taunted. Shao watched her in disbelief. Ms.Mi nearly fainted once again. The following day, Ms.Zhang was divorced and forcibly sent back to her home once again. However, the next day she regretted her impulsive confession. Tearfully, she pleaded with the Shao family to allow her to stay until after the new year. Shao was on the verge of accepting her plea, but he was overruled by Ms.Mi and second uncle. Ms.Mi snapped, "Stay until the new year? I don't want to be poisoned to death by you." Upon hearing those words, Shao had no further arguments. He steeled his heart and, with the assistance of some fellow villagers, returned Ms. Zhang and the divorce papers to the Zhang village. Regardless of what Mrs. Zhang or Ms. Zhang said, their minds remained unchanged. Ms. Zhang had admitted to all her wrongdoings, and the villagers of Shaoding were no longer willing to accommodate her. Back in the Zhang family's home, Ms. Zhang felt immense regret. Compared to the life she had with her mother, the torments she endured at her husband's home seemed insignificant. At least, in her husband's home, no one treated her like an animal or denied her food. She despised her mother-in-law, but she had never taken a moment to reflect on her own actions. If only she hadn't been so stubborn and blinded by her loyalty towards her brother, she wouldn't have ended up in this predicament. She had become a fool. What was wrong with her? Her own family showed no compassion, and she had even kidnapped her own son for their sake. But what had she gained in the end? She brought no benefits to her mother's family, and instead, she earned resentment and hatred from her husband's family. Now she was being cursed and scorned by her own family. Everything she did was for the sake of her own family, but their treatment of her was completely different. Once again, Ms. Zhang attempted to elicit compassion from her in-laws through loud cries and even fainting, but Ms.Mi sent her back to the Zhang family that very night. Ms. Zhang finally gave up. She cried uncontrollably. She realized that her husband's family would never forgive her. And as for her own family, they didn't want her to waste any resources at home, so they sold her to a middle-aged man in a destitute, impoverished village. Her parents and brother couldn't wait to seize the opportunity to make some money, so they hastily arranged the deal. Chapter 876. Ms. Zhang's Udat Bisenvel. The settlement was 5 liang. No matter how much she pleaded, she was still sold away. During her visit to Ms. Fang and Qiao Xian, Ms. Yan shared what had transpired with the second branch of the family and Ms. Zhang. Ms. Fang reacted with frustration. One knew it. But without evidence, there was little one could do to confront her. I simply thought it best to keep our distance. Nevertheless, it's a good thing that Ms.Mi divorced her. Qiao Xian sighed, acknowledging that Ms.Mi had, in a way, taken the right course of action. Sometimes, things were resolved in unexpected ways due to someone's brashness. All things considered, it was for the best. After all, it was extremely challenging to keep a safe distance from someone as extreme and malicious as Ms. Zhang, especially when neither Qiao Xian nor Shao Yunduan were around. The concern for the well-being of the family weighed heavily on their minds. Qiao Xian still had worries regarding the papayas and dragon fruits. With that in mind, she decided to travel to the province, visiting First Madam and purchasing some gifts along the way. She also made arrangements for Qi to stay with Xie Jingrong and the Xie family. It wasn't a decision made lightly, as asking for such assistance was never an easy matter. The debt of gratitude would need to be repaid eventually. Moreover, Shao Yunduan wanted to avoid any rumors suggesting that he was heartless, potentially causing others to look down on him and making it harder for him to seek assistance in the future. Shao Yunduan valued his friendship with Xie Jingrong and the Xie family, but he couldn't simply owe them a favor indefinitely. However, when it came to Qi's safety, he didn't hesitate to take this step. He informed the family of his decision and together they embarked on the journey to the province with Qi, Taotao and Qiao Xian. As they arrived in the province, they noticed that the lights were already on, despite the early hour. Since it was quite cold inside the mansion, they opted to stay in a hostel instead. The following day they paid a visit to Ms.Mi, who was overjoyed to see them. She invited them to stay with the family and instructed her men to retrieve their luggage from the hostel. Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan expressed their gratitude happily. Living there without Ms.Mi and Yuezheng Ting, Qiao Xian felt a sense of relief. Yuezheng Shao's brother Yuezheng Hong was also present, and he hosted a family banquet to welcome the couple and their family. It was a delightful occasion. Yuezheng Shao accompanied them outside of town to inspect the fruits. Although the fruits didn't grow during winter, they were still alive and not withered. They showed signs of vitality. Yuezheng Shao smiled with emotion. Honestly, I was worried about these seeds. I came to check on them a few days ago when the weather changed and they seem to be doing well. I never expected that the fruits from the south could thrive so beautifully here. Qiao Xian had already used her superpower to test the fruits. They were all in good condition with healthy roots underground. This brought her a sense of relief. She smiled and said, "It's not yet the coldest day, so we'll have to wait and see if they can sprout next spring when the weather warms up." Chapter 877, Qiao Xian's Happiness Udat by Zinvel. "Seem, it should be." Yuezheng Shao expressed his confidence, adding, "I wouldn't be so sure if I were talking to anyone else but you. You have a remarkable talent for nurturing plants. I believe there won't be any problem at all." Qiao Xian laughed, accepting the compliment graciously. If Yuezheng Shao said so, then she didn't need to provide any further explanations. His confidence alleviated her concerns. As they walked through the garden, Qiao Xian took occasional breaks, using her superpower to assist the plants in thriving during the winter. She ensured that they would soon bud and flourish when spring arrived. Satisfied with her work, Qiao Xian spent an entire day in the garden, free from worries. Later they had dinner with Xie Jingrong, during which they shared the news of Qi's voluntary decision to join the army and requested Xie Jingrong's support and protection. Xie Jingrong was taken aback by the news, but he spoke highly of Qi and readily agreed to Shao Yunduan's request. Providing a letter of recommendation was a simple task for the Xie family. As someone familiar with military camps, Xie Jingrong shared some insights with Qi. Qi's eyes sparkled with excitement as he listened to the stories. He nodded eagerly and asked curious questions. Even Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian gained a better understanding, which alleviated their worries to some extent. Military camps might not be as dreadful as they had initially imagined. Xie Jingrong had an extensive collection of books on military and armies, and he offered to search for some suitable ones for Qi to read, which Shao Yunduan could take back home. Shao Yunduan was delighted with the offer and expressed his gratitude to Xie Jingrong, asking if he could make copies of the books. Xie Jingrong agreed, giving his permission for Shao Yunduan to make copies. Shao Yunduan decided to copy the books and store them in the village's library, which was currently under construction. He made copies of all the books he had access to from the Xie family's collection, being cautious not to ask for more than he was given as it might seem greedy. After all, the Xie family had multiple members and resources to manage. Everything proceeded smoothly and their hearts felt lighter. First Madame accompanied Qiao Xian and Taotao, joining them in purchasing various goods for the upcoming new year. Combined with the gifts from First Madame, their wagons were filled to the brim. To Qiao Xian's surprise, she received an unexpected gift during this time. Yuezheng Hong had brought seeds of sweet melons, along with 2 large bunches of blueberry tree buds and cherry buds. He explained that the melons were delicious, but due to the long distance, they couldn't be brought back without the risk of rotting. Instead, he brought the seeds for Qiao Xian to plant at home. Blueberries thrived in mountainous regions and could be made into delicious jam, so he had brought some buds for her to grow. The same applied to the cherry buds. Yuezheng generously offered Qiao Xian the opportunity to start planting them at home. If they thrived and survived, he would provide her with more. Qiao Xian expressed her heartfelt gratitude for the thoughtful gifts. Sweet melons, essentially cantaloupes, didn't have their current name yet, as it would be coined in the future when they were introduced. The prospect of growing cherries and blueberries excited Qiao Xian. She believed they would flourish in their care. With utmost care, Qiao Xian took the precious gifts home, treasuring them like her most valuable possessions. Chapter 878, Surprise Yudat by Zinvel. This trip had been highly productive and fruitful for them. With the new year approaching, First Madam insisted they didn't stay for too long. She even invited them to join them after the new year, so they could travel with the business troops to the capital. Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan expressed their gratitude and appreciation for the invitation. Traveling from the province to the capital couldn't be done by boat, it had to be done over land. The journey was long and required careful planning. They couldn't simply hire a single wagon and set off. It wasn't convenient or safe. There were unknown dangers that could be encountered along such a lengthy journey. What if they encountered robbers on the outskirts? It would spell doom for them. Typically, a group of friends would gather together and travel to the capital collectively for the examination. It provided a sense of security and reliability. Another option was to find a business troop heading to the capital. By offering them gifts and presents, they could gain permission to join the troop and travel together. Usually, the business troops would approve of such requests, as the recommended individuals traveling to the capital had the potential to become successful officials. This created a sense of indebtedness toward the troop. However, most business troops didn't travel such long distances. They needed to make stops along the way to sell their goods, sometimes spending days in bustling cities. Unfortunately, recommended men heading to the capital couldn't afford such delays. Not everyone was fortunate enough to find a suitable business troop for their journey. However, First Madam had made arrangements for them in the province. By the time Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian returned home, it was already the 20th of December. They arrived just in time for the preparations for the upcoming new year. They had purchased a wide variety of exquisite and delicious snacks, including candies, candied fruits, and roasted seeds and nuts. The assortment included delicacies such as lotus cakes, mung bean cakes, cloud cakes, poria cakes, shortbread, small twists, dragon beard cakes, sweet-scented osmanthus sugar, peanut sesame candies, pine nuts, small walnuts, melon seeds, almonds, and more. Shao Sanlang and his wife were overjoyed to see these treats. Each person also received 6 new sets of clothes, including shoes and socks, as well as women's rouge, gouache, various silk flowers, children's spinning tops, clay figurines, cloth tigers, tumblers, wooden knives, swords, pony puppies, and various toys. Additionally, there were dried seafood and other household items. Qiao Xian even purchased ornaments worth 200 to 300 liang for each girl in the family, including Shao Qing. Shao Junyan and his younger brother received a pair of golden bracelets and a golden key with jade. The first section of the family was ecstatic upon receiving these gifts. They spent half a day admiring and appreciating them. The next day, Qiao Xian was eager to begin planting the blueberries and cherry trees alongside Taotao, and Yang Xiaoni in the empty space designated for cassava cultivation. The other family members understood that these were fruit trees from other regions, and they eagerly anticipated the prospect of enjoying the fruits in the coming year. Their motivation was high as they joined in the planting process. As they set to work, some passing villagers sneered, commenting that it wasn't the appropriate time for tree planting. They claimed that tree planting should commence after the Lantern Festival when the weather becomes warmer, unless there was a sudden return of spring coldness. Qiao Xian responded with a smile, countering their skepticism. Elle received these trees from a friend in the province. They were brought from outside the city. I can't just leave them sitting here. Who knows, they might actually survive. Chapter 879, Not Giving Yudat by Zinvel. CM Yang Xiaoni and the others agreed, despite the unconventional timing for tree planting. Perhaps, just maybe, these trees could defy the odds and survive. With renewed enthusiasm, they quickly transported the straws and covered the seeds, exchanging smiles and saying, "All right, we've provided them with warmth. Yes, our trees should make it through the winter." Satisfied with their efforts, they happily returned home. Upon their return, Ms. Fang asked Yang Xiaoni to prepare some items for the third section of the family. Xiao Yunduan and Xiao Xian had purchased a significant amount of goods in the province, and it was only fitting to share some gifts with the third section as a gesture of goodwill. Considering Xiao Yunduan's promising future, it was unnecessary to quibble over such minor matters. It wouldn't be worth tarnishing their reputation over such trivialities. Miss Fang selected pastries, dried fruits, simple garments, and elegant silk flowers for them. Ms.Mi, aware that Xiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan had returned from the province with 2 wagons full of items, expressed her gratitude and accepted the gifts. Shortly after Ms. Fang and Yang Xiaoni left, Ms.Mi started going through the presents and approached Ms. Niu, asking, "What did the first section of the family give you? Let me see them too." Confused, Ms. Niu responded, "What presents?" Ms.Mi pursed her lips. "Xiao Yunduan went all the way to the province to buy things and gave some to us. Didn't they give you anything? They've become quite selective, haven't they? Traveling to the province just to buy things." She couldn't help but feel bitter as she thought about her hard-working son at home. Inwardly, she resolved that once her son became a recommended man, she would also hire a wagon and go to the province to buy things. Word spread quickly in the village, and Ms. Niu was well aware that Xiao Yunduan and his wife had returned from the province. Her face twisted as she replied, "They didn't give us anything." Disappointed, Ms.Mi told Ms. Niu, "All right then, we'll talk about this tomorrow," and left. Ms. Niu eagerly anticipated the arrival of the first section of the family, but they never came. However, she soon spotted Xiao Xiaoji wearing a beautiful silk flower on her head, proudly showing it off to Xiao Meiling, who became extremely angry. Ms. Niu shared this incident with her husband when he returned from visiting their neighbors. "That's outrageous. They gave presents to the third section of the family but not us. They're looking down on us," he exclaimed. Second uncle grew annoyed and frowned as well. Ms. Niu couldn't tolerate it any longer. She believed that they deliberately excluded them, not because they were busy. "I can't tolerate this any longer. I'm going to go and talk to them." Ms. Niu exclaimed, her anger driving her to the first section of the family. Winter days grew darker earlier, and Xiao Xian was already preparing dinner, even though it was only 4 o'clock. They had decided to have sauerkraut fish hot pot and pork belly chicken hot pot for dinner. Ms. Niu's arrival caught everyone's attention as they were busy with the food preparations. Yang Xiaoni smiled and asked, "What's the matter, Auntie Niu?" Ms. Fang raised an eyebrow, her expression unkind. Ms. Niu became even more irritated upon hearing that strange title. "Honestly, sister-in-law." "Hey," Ms. Fang interjected. "Who's the sister-in-law here? Just call me Ms. Fang. We're no longer the way we used to be, and it's not appropriate to address each other like that, right?" Chapter 880, Not Your Elder Sister-in-Law Yudat Baizenvel. CM the others echoed her sentiments. Ms. Niu. "Ha, look at these daughter-in-laws. Are you really trying to start a fight here? Is it amusing?" "No one here is interested in starting a fight with you," Ms. Fang replied with a stern expression. "The family has already made it clear and you can't ignore that. But it's a shame that you refuse to accept it. Furthermore, don't call me elder sister-in-law, it disgusts me." Ms. Fang would never consider her as a sister-in-law, especially after Ms. Niu tried to set up Taotao and forced her to marry someone they didn't approve of. Soon Ms. Niu realized the reason behind it all. "So, you gave presents to the third section of the family and not us because of this?" "Yes," Ms. Fang replied bluntly. "The third section of the family is part of our family, but you are just like any other villagers with the same surname. If I give presents to you, should I give presents to everyone else in the village too? We can't afford that. It doesn't work that way." Ms. Niu fell silent. Only now did she realize the distinction between being part of the family and being from the same clan. Her heart felt bitter. She simply couldn't accept it. "Elder sister-in-law? Don't call me that. You're so cruel. We share the same in-laws, we're not ordinary clan members. Doesn't elder brother know about this?" Ms. Fang sneered. "You're not ordinary clan members, and even ordinary clan members wouldn't have tried to arrange a marriage for my Taotao. You want my husband? Go and confront him yourself if you dare." Ms. Fang dismissed her and drove her away after making her statement. Turning to the others, she said, "Ignore her. Treat her like this from now on. She's nobody but someone from the clan." Ms. Niu felt as if she was going to faint and vented her frustration to second uncle. She grew increasingly infuriated by the situation. Second uncle turned pale as well, becoming lost in his thoughts. Others noticed that his anger seemed different now. Was the first section of the family truly serious about this? They had never believed it before, thinking that being brothers would prevent any change. However, the first section of the family had slapped them in the face. Times had changed. Meanwhile, Mrs. Yen and Shao Xiling had been visiting the Yen family, and Mrs. Yen had allowed them to stay for an extra half day. That's why they hadn't shown up until now. However, the couple was taken aback by the tense atmosphere at home. Ms. Yen inquired about what was happening. Ms. Nyo had a lot to complain about to Ms. Yen, cursing the first section of the family for their actions. Deep inside, Ms. Yen smiled bitterly. If she had been at home today, she wouldn't have allowed her mother-in-law to confront the first section of the family about this. It was too humiliating. Mom, the clan has confirmed this and our relationship has changed. Why bother? The decision of the clan is not something to be taken lightly. Ms. Nyo shouted, so you think it's my fault? Ms. Yen silently agreed with that sentiment, but she replied, I'm just reminding you that the clan has made a decision, and the first section of the family agrees with it. There's no need to interrogate them any further. Second uncle angrily chimed in, that may be true, but it's going too far. That's exactly what I mean. Ms. Yen added, they're angry after all, that you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.